Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. This is my continuing coverage. This is day 9 of Russia's illegal incursion into the Ukraine. Some are saying that this is World War III. Some are also saying that the world is closing their eyes and shutting their ears and keeping their mouths shut because they don't want to face reality. But that's exactly what we're facing right now. Reality. I've got no panel tonight. It's Friday night. The Batman got released tonight. One of my co-hosts was actually going to go see it at 2:30 Central Time. So him not being here is a bit of a surprise to me. My other co-host, who I dragged into the room, is probably asleep. Don't know yet. But if he unmutes because he hears me, so be it. Anyway, in any event, I just want to recap a personal thing. I decided to do this every day until this conflict had ended because, number one, it's very important. This could be the kind of thing that you find in your history books 20 years from now. If you're still alive 20 years from now. If any of us are still alive 20 years from now. I've been trying to relate the situation on the ground in Eastern Europe to World War I, basically. Every major conflict that has been considered a world war had typically started with a small nation or a flyover nation or just a place that has been sort of under the radar geopolitically for some time, and a leader dies or a martyr is made or a pariah has been created, and that gives world nations an excuse to choose sides and basically go to war. And what you have here is a diamond in the rough when it comes to global leadership. You have a guy who was an actor and a comedian and apparently quite the dancer. He actually won the Ukrainian version of Dancing with the Stars. He had created I think it was a movie. He wrote it, directed it, and essentially foreshadowed his own real life about being the president of Ukraine. And it's very likely, because of his perseverance to stay in country, stay vocal, stay visual, and home, that the hit squads that have been placed or tasked to find him and execute him could very well succeed. I mean, it's not a very large country. There's only so many places he can go. And eventually someone's going to narc the guy out because it's like a Shakespearean tragedy, right? Someone's going to backstab this guy eventually. And if he dies, the world they'll put on their best PR face and they will attempt to mourn him, and it will be the powder keg for the Ukraine to hate us. And what I mean by us is not just the United States. They will have an excuse to hate everything that they believed in. The West, NATO, UN, the EU, United States, all of it. Because for the last 9 days, everyone has sat back and watched it. And their response was, "Oh, you poor thing. Here, we'll send you some helmets. Here, we'll send you some bullets. Here, have a couple of javelins." when the very thing that they have needed this entire time is air cover, either in the form of no-fly zone or just a covert aerial incursion, where, in my opinion, if you take away Putin's ability to fight a war, then he has no reason to fight it. So people and pundits and critics and armchair generals and aircraft pilots and armchair ace combat aces, they've all been watching this, quote, 40-mile long convoy for the last 5 days barely move. And everyone sat there and looked at it and said, my God, what a juicy, vulnerable little target that is. And yet, nobody can do a thing about it. The Ukrainian Air Force is not eradicated. They are decentralized. That is without question. But they're still running sorties, so to speak. And I feel like maybe they are not in a position to be able to reach that convoy or to effectively attack that convoy, whether it's because they lack the proper munition to do actual damage to it, or maybe that the anti-aircraft defenses in that convoy are so good or sophisticated or lucky or just thick enough that a flight over it is suicide. Nobody knows because nobody can see it. But all right, I'm going to address the chat because what I'm having right now is a difference of opinion. There's a lot of people who are asking, is this World War III? And a lot of people are asking, do I want it? And Squib in particular right now in the chat is asking why I want it. I don't. I don't want anything like this because people like he and I, we're too old for this. The age of where we were in our prime, where we would have been conscripted or to volunteer, it's over. This is a younger person's conflict and game. And I find it really tragic that a couple of wrong moves is going to result in the deaths of a lot of young people. This could be doctors, musicians, lawyers, world leaders. Brilliant minds are going to be lost because of this. And it's not that I want it. I think the world needs to understand and realize that we're in it already. And you can put your hand over your ears, or you can close your eyes, or you can go blah, 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 and scream at the world. But because we are a global economy and a global society, it's very hard to ignore the fact that this is happening. And I just believe that right now what's happening is the world is afraid of the boogeyman. And that boogeyman is the Soviet Union, which no longer exists. The Russian military has proven already that it's not what it was. It's not disciplined the way it was. It's not raised the way it was. It's not effective like it used to be. But everyone is so scared shitless of the stigma of its past that that's all they've got to go on. And apparently it's working. And anybody who says that we're not involved in this war is lying to themselves. Because, well, okay, I'll give you an example. Right now, people are screaming at the fact that Russia is attacking civilian targets. They're attacking population centers. They're attacking the people of the Ukraine in their homes, in the high rises, in public places. And Vladimir Putin's justification for this is the people of the Ukraine have chosen to arm themselves And because they have armed themselves, they are now considered enemy combatants, meaning there is no safe place for them to be there. And I guess the inverse to that is you cannot put troops on the Ukraine country. You cannot put aircraft in their airspace. But the fact that you are sending weapons of war to that country that will be used to kill that country's enemy combatants immediately makes you a co-conspirator to that war. And you can disagree all you want, but you'll never convince me otherwise. If you're providing the weapons of war that are killing Russians, even though you're not physically killing them yourselves, you are a participant in that war by proxy. And as such, you are a co-conspirator to that conflict. So, Squib, you're never going to convince me. We're in it. You can lie to yourself all you want, but face the reality of it. We're arming them. So we are them. We are part of them. We are continuing their ability to wage war. If we didn't want to be involved, if the world didn't want to be involved, nobody would send anything. Russia would steamroll the country and this conflict probably would have been over. And they would have hated us for it. I don't care about Lend-Lease, Squib. We are providing the weapons of war to the enemy of the enemy. That's the facts. You can't spin that any other way. I'm sorry, you're just not going to convince me. That's what it is. And because these people are begging for air cover and we're not giving it, they're building up a case of animosity that we will not be able to get away from it. No, you see, you're completely wrong, dude. When you send the weapons of war to the people who use them against their enemy, then they are your enemy by proxy. I can't explain that any simpler. Okay? If I handed you a gun and you went and killed your wife, I am a co-conspirator to your murder. I would go to jail for your murder. I would be guilty of the crime. Okay? So if I provide the weapons to a country who's using them against their enemy, then that enemy is obviously going to say that I'm their enemy. I can't draw it any simpler for you. But I will clarify that there is a brilliant military mind out there who has found a way. And they found a way in such a way that we don't have to get involved. No, I'm not talking about emotions and feelings, dude. I just gave you the perfect example. If you can't handle that, then this discussion's over, okay? If I handed you a gun and you went and murdered your wife, I go to jail because they'll find out that I gave you the gun. It's that simple. There's no emotion and feeling about that. That's laws, okay? That's facts and laws. If you can't accept that, then I can't make it any simpler for you. I don't know how to explain that to you any easier, okay? We're co-conspirators to a war. We are fighting a war by proxy. The Cold War was a war by proxy. Grab a history book. It's pretty obvious, okay? It's simple. All I'm saying is people keep saying we don't need to get involved, and we're already involved. Oh, you can't get in yourself. Okay, hang on a sec. There. So I do have a co-host. I have a night strike. He went to go see the movie. Don't spoil it.
No. I had to go run errands for family after that. So
that's fine.
You know,
that's fine. That's cool.
So sorry I'm late.
Okay.
I hear you're arguing with the chat, so good job.
Well, okay. I want to try to reason this out. Okay.
I see your reasoning, but
if honestly, I gave you a gun, Night Strike. If I gave you a gun, and you went and committed a crime with that, right?
You would be guilty of giving me the gun, yes.
Yes. Now, if I gave guns to another country, and they're fighting another country, and they're killing people with them, then that other country is going to point to me and say, oh, well, they wouldn't have been able to kill our guys if you didn't give them javelins, right? Pretty obvious. Simple reasoning, simple logic. There's no emotion behind that. It's I provided the weapons that were used to kill another country's people, right?
Right.
Okay. So how is any of that emotional?
Ah.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, the ones that's getting attacked with those weapons would get pretty angry, so that's how it'd be emotional.
Right. And like the thing is no, I'm saying like, okay. Okay. I have a photo I'm going to share soon. It's a
Okay.
breakdown of the contributions of all the countries that have given things to the Ukraine
Right.
that helps them in their defense of their country.
Okay.
By personnel, to Squib's point, by personnel, we're not involved. That's
Right.
true. That is true. We don't have troops in there. We don't have aircraft in the air. We're not directly killing Russian people. So he's right. I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is if you are providing the very things that the country you're helping is using against their enemy has a very clear case to point out that you are providing the weapons of war to their enemy, right? So you, by
Well,
proxy, are the enemy.
no, because Squib did bring up a point of lend-lease. You remember the lend-lease program the United States did for literally everybody who was against the Nazis and the Japanese,
Yes, we sent tanks
because
and we
we didn't
sent
want to get
weapons.
involved.
We sent them to no, no.
Well, that was it before. Before, yes, we didn't want to get involved
Right. But the fact of the matter is we sent
before we were attacked.
weapons and we sent aircraft, we sent bombs, we sent ammunition, we sent all these things to Russia, we sent them to England, and then they used them, and Germany still declared war on us, didn't they?
Well, only
So,
after the Japanese did.
but the fact of the matter is we were providing what they needed to fight and kill Germans, right?
Well, we were lend-leasing it, so technically we were selling them to them.
Wait, let me catch up on the chat because I'm just trying to understand what he's saying here.
Well,
So he's saying
I'm
the
trying to
United
get it
States and
too.
France are guilty for British deaths during the Falklands War.
No,
Well, because
I think that would be Brazil.
I'm not even going to
Brazil.
touch that one.
I
The
don't know what.
Russians who armed the Ukraine are responsible for the deaths of Russian soldiers. Are the Russians arming Ukrainians?
No,
So why is he asking that question? Now, if
I
he's
think he's
referring
trying to make the
to
point where if we arm them, then by proxy we're allying ourselves. We're choosing a side, militarily, and that by arming them, we are in that war.
we are co-conspirators to that war. We are suppliers of weapons of death to that war. If this was a military tribunal, right? If we were on the wrong side of this, right? Imagine this. Imagine this. What if China was providing weapons to Russia that they were using to kill Ukrainians, right? And then we end this conflict and Russia surrenders, and then we find out that China supplied a lot of the weapons that the Russians used to kill Ukrainians. We would hold China to account. They would be smashed with sanctions back into the Stone Age, wouldn't they? They wouldn't let that
Hmm.
go. That wouldn't
No,
just pass over, would it?
no.
Okay. So what I'm trying to point out is the world keeps doing these, oh, you have our
Actually,
thoughts and prayers.
actually, Squib, you're wrong on that one. The Soviet Union is responsible for the death of Soviet soldiers because of all the Mosin Nagant rifles Finland captured during the Winter and Continuation Wars. Actually, Squib, you're wrong. The Soviet Union is not responsible. The Russian Empire is responsible because they originally contracted those rifles to be made. So I caught you in that argument, Squib.
Spanish Civil War was the first test of German aerial bombing of a civilian population. Guernica. Okay, we
Hmm.
know the story of Guernica. Pablo
Yeah.
Picasso painted a very famous painting over his interpretation of the suffering of the people of Guernica, right?
Right.
The Spanish
Hmm.
hated Germany for that. Okay? When World War II broke out, they didn't have the means to wage war in the first place, right? They sort of remained kind of neutral in the fact because they didn't have anything to use to fight the Germans, and they were so far away from the conflict, and the Germans never made it all the way to the Spanish coast. But they did take Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, my point is, look,
I thought the nationalists in Spain were allied with the Nazis.
to up until what, 1941? Look,
Uh,
all I'm driving at is an
huh.
argument can be made by one side against the other, either way, right? So like we can blame Russia for mass genocide. We can blame them for illegally entering into another person's country and attacking them. And we
Mhm.
can say that you shouldn't be doing that, especially against a smaller country that, for no good reason, right? And then we
Right.
can provide them weapons to defend themselves. And in the
Uh,
defense of their country, they will kill enemy combatants. Enemy combatants will die. If this was a civil case, they would say, my soldiers wouldn't have died if you didn't provide the weapons that killed them.
yeah,
It's the same
that's
thing
just
as like he tried to bring up
that's
the thing
just
with
like saying
Remington. Okay?
my soldiers wouldn't have died if that war hadn't started.
Well, here's my point. He
And
tried to
that's the
say that
point.
is Remington responsible for the deaths of the kids at Sandy Hook? No.
No,
Okay, but that's not even close to the
it's the
same
guy who
argument.
pulled the trigger's fault.
Right, but
He
it's
should be
not the
responsible,
same
but they
argument.
didn't go after him because he killed himself.
No, wait, I'm trying to tell you that his argument's completely invalid, okay? You can't blame Remington for the deaths of Sandy Hook. You can blame the country who provided weapons of war to an entire army that killed another nation's army. That's different than a civilian conflict, okay? It's not even fucking close. Like, the fact that you even brought that up sort of pisses me off. Because you're trying to pick manufacturers. I'm trying to pick responsibilities of nations that provide weapons of war to other nations. Like, why did you even bring that up? That's the dumbest argument you've ever brought up. And I didn't even have bourbon. Anyway.
You shouldn't.
Anyway. The point is yes, we don't want to get involved in this. I get it, okay? It's not our fight. It's not our war. I understand that. Like, I don't want anybody to go to war with anybody. I get that. But when this nation in like has an incursion with another nation, and these people are trying to enter the very union that you're a part of, okay? And they've just been slow walked the whole time, and now all of a sudden it's like a crisis. All of a sudden you can fast track this. You can be like, yo, you want to be a part of this, you want to be part of capitalism in the free world, you're being attacked by communism and socialism of the world before, you have an application into being here, we're just throwing these stupid loopholes to keep you from getting in here any quicker. And now it's like they need the world to help them. They
And
need the
nobody's doing a
world
damn
that,
thing.
listen, this is the best way to describe it. They need the world that they want to join to help them to break away from the world that they left. And now, if the world they want to join abandons them, and the world
You're
that
gonna
they
blame them.
left conquers them, all the people of that country are going to hate us for abandoning them. And they're just going to fall under communist rule again. See, the problem with this is, and I don't, as anybody who knows anything about warfare, right? I'm not saying I do. I'm not a general,
Uh,
but
hold up. HVS said something just now. It says Ukraine gave up nukes while everyone applauded and said, "How nice." Nations are not responsible for what they do. See sovereign immunity. Well, no, that's not entirely true.
the
But
Ukraine was asked to disarm their nuclear armament
yeah,
as part of the deal to consider them to join NATO.
and the United States
NATO told them, if you drop
said
your nukes, don't worry, we'll protect you.
we'll protect you. And what aren't we doing?
No, we're not protecting them.
We're not protecting them, and they're getting attacked. So we're not abiding by our contracts and our promises. And,
Okay, I
you
gotta
know,
go. I gotta
love
go
it.
back a couple of points in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
'Cause Squib's trying to do a mic drop and he's just looking like an idiot doing it. I'm sorry, you're pissing me off. Russia provided weapons to China, who provided weapons to North Korea to kill UN forces during the Korean War. Yes, and that was the Cold War. And guess who we were against in the Cold War?
Russia. What the fuck is your point? Like, make your point, please, because we spent 40 years in a by proxy war, and Russia was always the enemy. Khrushchev even said, "We will crush you," and then they never did, but they held us off because of mutually assured destruction. And back in those days, they had a disciplined and very motivated military with nuclear weapons. Nowadays, they have a army of conscripts, and they only have the threat of nuclear war, and they only have the stigma of being the boogeyman. Like, if you're gonna drop the mic on me, have a fucking point that you can stand behind, because that has no fucking basis whatsoever. Okay, when you're gonna talk about the Cold War, they were always the enemy. You grew up in that era. I grew up at the end of that era. My dad grew
So
up
did
in
I.
that era. He served in that era, okay? There were times where he had to go into a mountain complex and be locked away from his wife for 30 days, okay? That was a very real threat. But yet we never fought Russia formally, did we? That was a war. That's why they called it the Cold War. So please, make your point, because I'd love to hear it where it actually makes a fucking lick of sense. Let's move on, because we got a lot of shit to cover. All I'm saying is that guy on the screen right there, he has basically said, we're not helping you. We're not helping the Ukraine, okay?
So we're not
Words,
abiding by the nuclear contract.
words don't stop bullets. They don't stop rockets, okay? And what have we been seeing them getting attacked by for 9 days? Bullets,
Rockets.
missiles, rockets.
Thermobaric weapons.
Well, look, I would like to jump behind that, but I still can't prove that. They can't either.
We found the launcher.
We found the launcher, but we still can't, until you see it happen on video in some way that's confirmable. I won't bang that drum yet. I can't, because then I could be called out for that. Russia has enough nukes to destroy the world as we know it. You are correct.
So does the United
do we.
States.
So do we. That goes back
Don't
to the.
kid yourself. We need to get rid of all of them.
That does go back to the argument of mutual assured destruction. My whole point, though, is you have a nation who wants to join the world you live in, the civilized Western world, okay? We wanted that. We want these states to leave what was used to be communist rule, right? We wanted them to leave that system of government, okay? We wanted to welcome them into our idea of thinking, because that makes them easier to convince to see things our way. That's a very simple concept, right? It's like, hey, come play for our team because we don't cheat like that team or whatever, right? And the fact of the matter is they said, yeah, we want to join you. And we're like, okay, well, there's this problem, you see. You've got nuclear weapons from Russia, and we don't like Russia or their nuclear weapons. So if you want to play for our team, we're going to have to ask you to get rid of those. Okay, that's what happened back in what, 2014? We said, look, if you want to play for our team, you got to get rid of these bad things in your country. And you know what they did? They abided. They said, well, if we do, we're kind of vulnerable. And then, the West was like, oh, don't worry, bro. If anything happens, we'll protect you. Just give us a call. We got a hotline. You can call us right up, right? That's the way that was set up. That's how, quote, diplomacy worked. You can try to lecture me on war, but that was basic diplomacy. You want to tell me that they just lied to him? Fine. That's government and politics and bureaucracy as usual, right? So be it. But the fact of the matter is they did what we asked. Now they're asking us to do something, and I'm not saying the United States, we collectively, as the UN, NATO, and the West, we're not following up. We're not keeping our end of the bargain. And the fact of the matter is the guy on the ground, not the military guy, the guy with his wife, the guy with his 3 kids, the guy who's trying to keep the roof from collapsing over his flat, and he's trying to decide, should I leave the country now? Should I leave the home that I just spent my whole life trying to build with this person and make these kids with? That they have to sacrifice everything. You know, we here in the States, yeah, we can tell stories about how we sacrificed everything to buy our house, or we sacrificed our free time to be able to afford to buy a certain thing in life, a certain luxury or whatever. But did you have to give up the house you built with your wife and kids for the last 20 years? That's now being shelled by an enemy combatant, that's reducing it to rubble, all your
Mm.
work and effort completely destroyed by some asshole on a global conquest? No, no, never. Not a single fucking person in this country can say that. They can say that they defended the country so it would never happen. Sure, okay, I'm with you on that. But you're not the man on the street getting shelled by a military from a foreign country. We have enjoyed the luxury and the protections of never being technically invaded in the last century, maybe a little longer. Okay? The, what has happened in the last century since so what has happened in the world since the last time that we were invaded? Think of how much technology and communications and travel and everything has changed. There is no comparison, not at all, not even close. The world when we were last invaded was inconceivably large, right? The idea that when people first started populating America and manifest destiny was like the rule of the day, the idea of getting to the other end of the country was Herculean and unfathomable. The distance was unfathomable. Now you can hop in a freaking SR-71 and cross it in what? An hour? Not even an hour? I mean, you're going to burn a lot of fuel to do it, but you see my point. The world got smaller. The internet made the world incredibly smaller. Globalism made the world smaller. Globalism has its pluses and minuses. I would agree with a lot of what you guys would say are the minuses, without a doubt. But the fact of the matter is you've got a country that wants to separate from the very itchy blanket of communism that you spent a generation fighting against. And now when they're playing by your rules and they're saying, hey, we need help, we're getting their shit pushed in, everyone's like, nope, can't do it. Sorry. That would get us involved. Sorry, but we're already involved. Now, just keep that in mind. Keep my rant in mind, because I will show you how involved we are. I will show you how much the world is involved. I've got this separated, and I've got a nice graphical breakdown of all the co-conspiracy that's going on. Yes, okay, so, you know, HVS is going in there and he's putting in these points, right? So, yes, Britain burned down the White House. Sure. How big was the world in 1812? How long did it take for Britain to sail the ocean and get here and amass an army and to do that? Months, right? Maybe, well, yeah, months. Let's just say months. If they wanted to burn down the White House today, how long would it take them to do it? How long does it take an ICBM to travel that far? That's my point. The world got way smaller. The reaction times demand to be much faster because of the speed of how things travel. Information, munitions, armies, whatever. Propaganda, whatever it is. We're going to get to all that, though. That's a long rant. I didn't mean to be belligerent. It's just I was just making an opening monologue about how the world is sort of. I know you're going to say that it's not a responsibility, and I agree with you. I do agree with you. But at the end of the day, if you want to be the police of the world, then you better do your fucking job. And that's the system of diplomacy we have in this country. The reason we became a world superpower was because in the beginning we were the lords of war. We provided the arms for other nations to conduct war. And then when they couldn't finish what they started, then we had to go into the ruins of their country once the enemy gained experience and dug in deep, and then it made the job of getting rid of that combatant 10 times harder. See, this is the other problem. This is the other tangent I'm working on right now. If you eradicated, if the UN or the EU would take the lead on this, and if the United States didn't get involved, right? And you know, I'm not against that. Believe me. You know, the thing that used to piss me off in the day back in the day was the United States always sent the most troops,
They always sacrificed the most blood. And then you would look at the breakdown of the other NATO nations, and it was like Italy sent 10 soldiers, Greece sent 4, United States 50,000, lost 20,000. It's like,
Yeah,
wait a minute.
why are we paying for the majority of NATO? Why aren't people
Right,
chipping in?
right,
And
right. And you know
but
what? Donald Trump pointed that out when he was president. He said, listen, pay your fair share. If we're going to get involved, you better be equally involved. All of that is correct, right? And I don't disagree with any of that. But
well, nowadays, now it seems like the other members of NATO are starting to do that
no, they're
little
not.
by little.
See, that's the problem. The United States,
Yeah,
want NATO and the UN, especially when it's on their side of the world, right? It's like, listen,
right.
you show us a commitment to stopping that first. You send 100,000 of your troops and you try to handle it because that's on your backyard. And if you can't handle it, then we will send a proportional amount of force to assist you. But see, in the past, historically, we've always sent the lion's share, and they've become fat and complacent and comfortable with that. And the people who give birth to the children here who lose them are sick of it. And Squibb is basically sick of it. And I don't disagree with that sentiment whatsoever. What I would love to see is NATO and the UN taking the lead on this. Let them put in a no-fly zone. Let them defend it.
Yeah,
And if they can't handle it with their collective forces right there in theater, they can say, look, we need a little bit more. Can you guys in the United States as a NATO ally help us? Then we could say, yeah, we can do that. I mean, I get it. We don't need to stick our nose in that right now. We don't need to be the tip of the sword for that either. I get that. Here's the problem. NATO and the UN have never taken the lead. So they don't know how. They don't know how much to send. They don't know what to do. They always depend on us to send the mass force and then try to, neutralize a threat or stabilize a nation, right? And they don't realize how much that costs us in terms of national debt, munitions, and recession risks, and just blood, sweat, and tears, right? They don't really realize that. But let's just say that they do it. Let them do it first. I get it. We should. We should. Like, they should handle this, and they won't because they want us to do it for them first. And that's going to put us directly militarily in conflict. And I guess that's what he's driving at is we shouldn't be the ones directly leading the charge. And I understand that. If it was in our backyard, different story. It's not. But it could get here. I mean, this is hypothetical, so I'm going to go ahead and just say that now. But imagine if that attack last night actually took out the reactors in that plant. That place was 6 times the size of Chernobyl. Do you remember how large the exclusion zone of Chernobyl was? Now multiply that times 6, then factor in the ocean currents and like the wind table. And just imagine how much nuclear fallout that would have been. The problem is even if NATO gets involved, like say they wait 3 months, right? We've seen the map. They're stalled near the capital, yes. They've taken parts of the Northeast, yes.
for now.
And they're making a lot of gains in the South. And if all those forces link up, they have the intelligence of the ground. They know the area because they've conquered it. They've been occupying it, right? Now they're dug in. They've defeated the locals and they're dug in. And now we've got to go in while they're heavily defending it, when we could have wiped it out before they even got there, or before they even gained the experience. See, that's the most dangerous thing is even if you have an army of conscripts, sure, they might be green as hell, right? You give them 3 months of combat experience, they're going to get better. They're going to refine their tactics. They're going to dig in. They're going to know I can hide behind that hill or I can flank around that corner, whereas we just got there in theater. So they're going to have the advantage. Why do we make our fight harder knowing that we're inevitably going to be in it?
That's the problem. We know we're going to be in it globally, not just us. I'm saying like the UN and NATO, they know they're going to be involved eventually. Do you honestly think sanctions are going to stop this war? Sanctions ain't stopping bullets and rockets. Yes, it's
Nope.
hurting them economically at home. And yes, you got Lindsey Graham playing Tigress of Gaul saying that or the locals should assassinate the president of the USSR,
Which I'm not
Russia.
arguing. I am glad
None of
he's
us are
saying that.
arguing it, but the feasibility of it's damn near impossible. He's in the
I
Duma,
know.
he's in the Urals, he's got security details and everything, right? But it's like those reactions are because they want a swift end to it before we get forced into a conflict that's getting much worse by the day. See, I'm going to tell you guys something that I realized today that maybe you guys haven't caught on to yet. Maybe you will. Maybe our enemies will. Maybe terrorists will. And that's what's really frightening about the lesson of last night. You see, what we learned last night is you don't have to have nuclear weapons to be a nuclear threat. Because imagine this, right? Russia has nuclear weapons. That is with nobody's questioning that. But imagine if like I'm trying to think of a feasible thing for this. Imagine if Iran, okay, just somehow destroys that nuclear power plant, either through terrorism or a very calculated spearhead attack, right? They don't have nuclear weapons yet, but they have just destroyed a nuclear power plant. They have spread nuclear fallout over thousands of square miles. They became a nuclear threat without using a nuclear weapon. They did it with kinetic weapons, right? And yes, I understand power plants have seismic sensors and all this other stuff. They have control rods. They can shut down. They can shut down the nuclear power plant in the event of a war. I suspect after what happened last night, there may be a new doctrine saying if you're a nation with nuclear power and you're about to come under attack, you will forcibly shut your reactors down before the enemy engages, just to prevent it from happening, from being taken as an asset, or to create a one giant dirty bomb, basically, by leveling it, right? They may start changing, like the IAEA may actually start demanding that kind of doctrine. Hey, you're on the border of a belligerent nation. If they start to invade, you better flip a switch to shut down your reactors on a dime, if you had to, and turn them into just inert fucking reactors. That's not an unreasonable thing. That's realistic, right? If they knew that the Russians were going to attack that plant, don't you think they would have shut it down and be like, haha, you're attacking a lump of uselessness now. Go ahead, right? It wouldn't have been so dangerous. It wouldn't have been so scary. But there's no tactic, there's no doctrine for that. Because what happened last night, I think Vladimir Putin made good on his promise. Any belligerent nation or anybody assisting the Ukraine is going to witness a war that has never been seen before. He said that verbatim. What he did last night has never been done before. All the talking heads today in the UN, in NATO, our guys, the press, they all said the same thing. Never in the history of war has a belligerent nation attacked a nuclear power plant. That was a first. It's not going to be the last. Any belligerent nation, any terrorist organization, they're looking at that going, man, take some notes. That's brilliant. We don't even need nukes anymore. We just need a bunch of big bombs to hit that. And you know what, Squib? I agree with you. I completely agree with you. There is no guarantee. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I know we're not obligated to do it. I never, ever, ever once disagreed with you on that. I don't mind butting heads with you because you're brilliant too, okay? All I'm saying is the Ukrainians are saying what the world already knows, and the world is playing dumb with it. We're going to
Yeah.
be involved in this. You pick the day, is what they're telling us. The day that we pick may build an enemy that we could have saved and not made an enemy out of. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. And even then, right? Let's say let's say they do hate us. Let's say the Ukraine gets conquered and they get occupied and then they do guerrilla warfare for 10 years and then Russia leaves in defeat saying, "Look, we're losing too much for a scrap of land that has no real value." And they're so destroyed that they're not going to be useful to NATO for the next 10 years. They'll walk away, right? But the thing is now they don't want to join the West and they're not going to join Russia. And they're just going to be like, all of you leave us the fuck alone. I'm brilliant until I'm not. Well, okay, look. Look, I apologize if I seem like a jerk, okay? But you've apologized because you said you've been a jerk sometimes too. That's not the point. Like I'm not trying to like at the end of the day we both want the same thing, right? We don't want young people to die. We don't want old people to make young people die. I think we all agree
We
with
don't
that.
want to get involved in somebody else's war.
That is true. But I think what I'm saying is we didn't want it, but they're bringing it to us. They being either Russia or NATO or the UN. Because we all know what's going to happen. We all know what's going to happen. Like, do you want to do an over and under on this? Sure, I got the attack date wrong, but I still got the attack right. But I'm pretty sure even Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder saw that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into some of the stories because I'm sure some of the things I'm going to show you today will sort of illustrate what I'm driving at. And then maybe collectively we'll have a better understanding at the theme of what I'm driving at because I'm not right. Okay. I know, but guess why they don't have nukes anymore? Because
It's our fault.
we said, well, just get rid of them. We'll protect you.
Yeah.
And
You're doing
you
a
know
great
what?
job at that.
Here's the thing, right? They're not a belligerent nation, right? We're not scared of the Ukraine like we were worried about Iraq or I we're not Iraq and Iran, right? They are not Iraq and Iran. If at the end of this conflict we still don't help them and they still somehow survive, what they will basically do is say, we're going to get nukes again because obviously we can't depend on anybody. And they would be right. And then by having nuclear weapons, it's sort of like joining the club, isn't it? The reason we don't want North Korea and Iran to have nuclear weapons is because as soon as they do, they now have parity with us in terms of mutual assured destruction, which means we instantly have to negotiate with these people because now they have the same capabilities we do. Maybe not in the same volume, but they have the same capability. And
Right.
every time a nation gets that capability, the world gets a little more nervous. Like when was it Pakistan got got nuclear weapons, right? India, I think, has them, and it's like parts of the world were like, why do you need those? What was the point? And it's like it's that there is no point. The point is now we militarily, tactically, have the same capability as a global superpower. We're not considered third world anymore. We're not banging sticks and throwing spears. We have mastered the atom. And it takes a level of intelligence and perseverance to be able to do that, especially if that nation was never given the plans for what other nations had developed, right? Like if India said we developed the bomb, it may not look or work anything like ours, but it has the same explosion or the same effect. It's like a different answer to the same question in a way. But see, that's the thing. If Ukraine survives and Russia's defeated, now Ukraine has no reason to depend on us anymore. They're going to be like, look, we did this on our own. You guys were useless. Thanks for sending us a couple of weapons, but we still had to pay for that, tree of liberty with our own Ukrainian blood, which some would argue, well, that's what you have to do, right? That's what we did. That's what you have to do. Sure. Got it. Okay. I agree. But now because you've become so self-reliant, now you're going to be like, yo, we don't need y'all. We got a nuke too. We're going to develop one. That way we don't have to ask you this anymore. That way next time Russia comes in, we'll just be like, are you sure you want this smoke? Because we will light you up like Christmas. They can have that big stick argument
and they would have to be taken seriously. Same thing.
Yeah, I think this all started because Putin didn't take the Ukraine seriously.
It's not that Putin didn't take it seriously. It's Putin underestimated the resilience of the Ukrainian people. That's what it is. You see, the thing is this whole war, it's a war. Let's just call it what it is. This is not a police action. This is a war.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants it except Putin. The only reason Putin wants it is because he is now a 70-year-old man hell bent on a legacy that nobody else wants. All these satellite states are leaving the Soviet Union and Russia's Federation because they don't want a part of that system, right? They don't want it. The Russian people technically didn't want it. I mean, think about it. Now they've got, Apple iPhones, and they've got Netflix, and they've given us shows like To the Lake, which is called Epidemia over there. They are an emerging entertainment market, right? Because they've tasted the freedom Kool-Aid. They like it. They have oligarchs. They have billionaires. At one time, there was a story. I don't think it's current now, right? But I mean, I don't think it was current now. But a couple of years back, Russia had the most nouveau riche billionaires of any place in the world.
I think that's China now.
That's a side effect. Well, they do. Yeah, China and India have probably the most exploding middle class increase currently. Yeah. Sure, I'll give you that.
Okay.
Okay, so Squib's wondering, why do I want them to like us? I'm going to assume you're talking about Ukraine. It's not that I want them to like us. I want them to be glad that they made the decision to be like us. I guess that's the best way. And why don't I have faith in the Ukrainians, Uranians, Iranians to win? I don't know where you wrote that, but why do I not have faith in the Ukrainians to win? Okay. If it were a land-only campaign, I do. But I think the one thing that Russia's Air Force does, or the one thing that the Russian Federation does, is they have a superior Air Force. For the longest time, I think the first 5 or 6 days of this conflict, we were told that the Russian infantry, they basically do their operations at dawn and dusk. Now, when they got to the larger cities, they could operate later into the night and early morning hours because those cities were well lit. So, like the Zaporizhzhia, that nuclear power plant, it was lit up like Christmas. They still had to fire flares into it though, but like in the larger cities, they could maneuver more. When they were in like small towns in the fields or whatever, they wouldn't attack at night. The Russian Air Force did that because they had FLIR and better, I guess, they superior night vision compared to the infantry guys. Plus, you probably have to be more experienced to be in the Air Force than you do have to, just to be a fucking grunt, right? Just, thought. I could be wrong though.
You could be.
I could be. I'm not even going to try to claim that. It's just it has appeared to me that the Russian Air Force is definitely much more sophisticated and capable than the Russian infantry. There are less conscripts in the Air Force, clearly, than the infantry, like, without question. I say this is a war. I don't think we know what this really is. The truth was murdered before the troops were sent across any border. I'm trying to see it your way. I'm trying to understand it your way.
No.
This is a conflict between two national defense groups, right? Who have two differing ideologies, and it's a simple case of invaders versus repellers. It's a war. People are dying. It's a Russian police action. Have you seen the Russian police in the videos of St. Petersburg the last couple of days? There's a saying.
They're not nice people.
Patrick, there's a saying. I have a friend who lives in St. Petersburg, okay? He says there's a saying in Russia. When Oman shows up, which is the police that have the thing that says homo backwards, be somewhere else. They don't answer to anybody. They can fill you in, and there is no civil lawsuit. There is no wrongful death suit for the Oman. And even worse, if Sober shows up, that's the QRF version of Oman. If they show up, be in another country. Like, don't be anywhere near that. You better hope they don't even have your name. Anyway, Squib says if the Ukraine wants to be like us, then they need to be willing to fight with what they believe in and stand on their own. Oh wait, they are. They are. You're right. You're absolutely right. The guy on the ground, the infantry soldier on the ground, is doing exactly what you said. There are four world champion boxers, 2 active, 2 retired. One of those heavyweight retirees is the mayor of Kyiv. Okay, they're fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their countries. Vasily Lomachenko and Alexander Usyk, who is a heavyweight champion currently, okay, they didn't even have to go back. They went back voluntarily to fight for what they believe in. So in that regard, you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
They're not asking us to fight on the ground, are they? All they're asking us to do is clear the skies so their ground troops can do what they're supposed to do. It's not an unreasonable request. And some concessions have already been made towards that goal. Somehow, the the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, and I think the UN were able to negotiate what they call humanitarian relief corridors. Those corridors supposedly have protected skies. This is for military evac only, or sorry, humanitarian evac only. I guess medical and maybe flying people out, whatever. So that is a thing. It's only on the western end of the country, though. What the Ukrainian people are asking, the president, their parliament, and I think that's it, really. It's the president and their parliament, which is many people. We've seen tons of interviews. They're asking for protected skies so their ground forces can be to deal with the ground forces. I guess what they're saying is they're at an unfair disadvantage when it comes to air superiority, which is reasonable. You know, they're a small country, they have a smaller air force. Sure, got it. I don't know. I guess I don't have the answer to that. But the fact of the matter is no matter what we're going to do, we're going to get involved. We're already involved. We're involved with money. We're involved with munitions. We're involved with medicine. We're involved with donations of blood, not spilling it. So it's an inevitability. Now, I don't. This isn't a challenge. I want to know this. I want to say thank you. I learned something today. So if you're in the chat, can you name a conflict that we had provided all of this and didn't have to send in troops in recent memory? And then that side won. If you can name that, that'll help me understand, because it seems like every time we always start off with humanitarian aid, then we try to get involved diplomatically. We're trying to play like the intermediary at a divorce settlement kind of a thing, right? And then it always escalates beyond that. And the problem is a lot of times it's escalating because the other side is just hell bent on having their way. I mean, Putin's a prime example of that.
Well, you know, a lot of foreign people, and I say foreign people outside of our country, are kind of pissed because we spent the last 80 years being the world police, and now in a situation where, you know, actually warrants the world police putting their foot down, we're doing absolutely nothing.
Okay, to play to that point.
No, hold on. Let me finish, okay? Now I get that. I get what they're saying, but I also get the fact that we don't want to get into another war. We really don't have any business being in this war, and that, you know, us getting involved in another conflict isn't going to help our nation worth a damn.
Well, okay, I'm going to play into your point a bit, and it's going to play into Squib's stance on this too. Yes, the world sometimes gets really butthurt about the fact that we stick our nose in everyone's business, right?
Mhm.
That is
Yeah.
true. That is true. Then when they want us to, which is now, we're like, look, make up your mind. Do you want us involved or do you not want us involved? Because every time we get
Patrick is saying the
involved,
Rhodesian Bush War. Yeah, Patrick, do me a favor. Look on the map. Where do you see Rhodesia?
it doesn't
It
exist
doesn't
anymore.
exist anymore.
But look, the point is I get what you're saying. The world is like, help us, and we're like, no, because every time we did in the past, we had to sacrifice 90% of the lion's share of death, and then what did we get out of it? Your bitterness and animosity when we want to dictate policy after the fact, right? That's that's the price you pay for making us involved in your conflict. And what you're saying is there was a lot of times where the world was like, stop sticking your nose in our business. But you know what? Sticking our nose in the world's business, that's how America does diplomacy for centuries, right? That's how we got to where we are. We were we were not geopolitically on the radar until after the Spanish-American War. No one gave a fuck about us. We were the little guy. We were the Ukrainians up
And
until the
even after the
Spanish-American War.
Spanish-American War, they didn't see us as any sort of
You
power.
don't. You have
Hold on,
not talked about
hold
the
on.
Great White Fleet. That was a
That was
PR
after the
campaign.
Spanish-American War.
Exactly.
That was
That
after. And
that was a
that's what I was getting
campaign.
to if you would let me finish.
That was the campaign that put us on the map.
Exactly.
And then after that, we had to maintain the visual. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Keeping up appearances. That's what that is. But you keep keeping up appearances decade after decade after decade, and we're like always going, hey, bro, maybe y'all should, like, we're the guy in middle school that jumps in between two people pushing each other, getting ready to fight, and be like, yo, bro, calm the fuck down. What are y'all fighting about, right? And then someone throws a punch between those two, and then we got to punch them back because we just took a hit in the nose. Except the problem is every time we take a hit in the nose in someone else's conflict, our nose gets broken, and a lot of blood comes out. And a lot of people hate that on our side. I get that. I get that. All right, I want to read the chat because, I mean, I'm so glad the chat is as active as it is, honestly. It's a big shell game. Look at Ukraine. Don't look at what we are doing to seize control of all food supply chains, centralize all currencies, and criminalize dissent. Okay. The thing I love about HVS in chat is he doesn't look at this as X's and O's. He looks at this from 1,000 different perspectives because he's an investor. He was a business guy. Like, he knows these things, right? He pays attention to these things. There was stories about our involvement in Afghanistan, and it was like, why were we there? And there was a huge hit piece, and it was about how 3.5 you've heard me talk about this before. 3.5 trillion tons of iron ore was taken out of Afghanistan, quote, war reparations, right? Our excuse to get in, war on terror. British excuse, we're an ally to the United States. They took out 3.5 trillion tons of iron ore. Why did they do that? Because China was becoming an emerging market in the steel industry, and they were making steel cheaper than anyone else. And we needed the ore to be able to compete against that. That was the theory, okay? Now, a lot of people are saying also there was a bunch of lithium in there. Okay, that's another facet of that. Now, somebody told me this morning that there's a giant lithium mine in the Ukraine, too. Oh, wow, we're about to free the shit out of you then, aren't we? Because, I mean, if we just go by our modus operandi, that's exactly why we're going to get involved. But they won't sell it that way, will they? No. They're going to sell you hearts, minds, children, and women. Because that's all they talk about. We have to evacuate the women and the children. These people are dying wholesale. These Russians are dirty, commie, pinko, nuclear, weapon, dick-slinging assholes. Right? We can't have that. And then quietly they're like, give us the lithium, we'll take care of your problem. Undeniable. Anyway, I'm sorry. We've gone on for an hour, and I haven't even started doing the stories yet. Let's get into the stories, because I'm going to try to help paint a picture of my diatribe this morning.
Sorry,
I
Sean,
could be
I'm
very
sorry,
wrong.
Off track.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. Like, I didn't expect us to be able to have a discussion like this. The fact that there's this much chat participation and people are still here and watching, and I can argue with these people and still turn around and be like, yo, let's have a beer later? Cool, right? My emotions go out of this when the show ends. Like I don't have any animosity towards anybody in this. I'm just this is a problem, and we're voicing out our solutions to a problem. And I come at this from the perspective of how the human mind works. Okay, that's my expertise. Squibb has actually served in the military. He's actually seen the nuts and bolts of the military. He knows how diplomacy works, things like that. That's where he goes about this. HVS looks at this from like an economic standpoint or a business perspective. It's like all these different views is how collectively we're all going to come to an agreement on something. We're not we've known each other. Almost everybody who's in this discussion has known each other for years. So eventually all of us are going to get together on something to say that's how we do this. And it's going to satisfy everybody to some degree. It's going to annoy some people to some degree too. But that's how diplomacy works, doesn't it? Nobody ever gets all of one way or the other. I mean, unless you're in a total war. But the last time we were in total war, we fucking won it. Anyway, all right. Pink just got here. He said, "I was curious whatever happened to the ghost who shot down so many planes in the beginning. Why don't we just gift him an A-10 or an F-22 and an F-16?" Okay, so I have the answer to that. The ghost of Kiev is a myth. It hasn't been proven. He hasn't been named. And even if he was, don't you think there would have been gun camera footage? Just a thought. He's not real. It's a feel-good military propaganda story. They created an ace before an ace was made to give the Ukrainian Air Force, who is vastly outnumbered, hope and courage to become the next ace. It's a very basic tactic. It's a psychology thing. It's a very, very basic thing. Anyway, yesterday, since Pink is here, yesterday we talked about there were 3 air wings worth of A-10 Thunderbolt 2s. We call them Warthogs, but their technical name is Thunderbolt 2. There are 3 wings in, I think, Colorado that are airworthy but about to be decommissioned. And there are retired pilots who probably flew them, maybe not those specific ones, but they flew them in combat before, that were either veterans of Desert Storm or SHIELD or maybe even like the Kosovo conflict. And they are salivating and chomping at the bit at what they're seeing with that stalled convoy. And there have been many a discussion. We had one too.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard 2 versions of this. One was the A-10 is not suitable for this because it has more in common with a P-47 Thunderbolt than it does an F-35. And I don't like that argument because I think that the A-10 was a modern answer to the Russian Il-2 Sturmovik, which was a flying tank. It had an armored shell and heavy guns, cannons, and it was a ground attack airplane. And we did it better. Years later, but we did it better. And it was designed originally to be used in the Eastern European theater, where the mountains and the trees are and just all this shit, right? It's low and slow and deadly and heavily protected. So it's like, I don't agree with that sentiment that, no, it's not going to work there. Bullshit. It was designed for that. And I think Night Strike even pointed that out. I tried to look at it from the, it's not going to work. And he very quickly pointed out what it was designed for originally. And yeah, his math checked out. That's exactly what it was designed for. So it's like, I agree with him. And the other thing is you don't know it's going to work until you try it. Honestly. That convoy hasn't been tested yet. They don't know what the AA capabilities of that convoy is yet. Because you haven't heard a single story of the Ukrainian Air Force attacking it yet. And that's a curious thing, isn't it? Yes, they're decentralized.
Ukrainian Air Force or even the ground forces.
No. I've heard stories for the last 2 days that one of the reasons that it stalled is because the ground forces are harassing it. Hit and run.
Yeah.
They're hitting it. They're mortaring it, and they're like rocketing it, and they're javellining it. And they've got those Panzerfaust 3s that the Dutch sent over too. They're hitting it. There's
God
even
bless
some
the Dutch.
pictures of it. But the other thing, which I found extremely funny, um, a couple of quote experts were looking at the photos that were leaked from, I guess, even Russian photography, and they were saying that a lot of the problem is maintenance, vehicle maintenance. They don't have enough mechanics or good ones. A lot of the hardware that they're bringing into that convoy had sat in mothballs and storage since last April. So there was a spring that has a rainy season, there was a summer that had a dry season, and then they had a winter which is cold, right? So just think rubber seals and things. And most of their big trucks have CTIS, which is Central Tire Inflation System, which is just like what a Humvee has. You can change the tire pressure from inside the cab. It has a specialized hub that's got a rotor on it that keeps the air lines from getting twisted up and ripped off, obviously. And you can change the air pressure to air down for low traction situations. And then once you're out of the slime and goo and muck, you can raise them back up for, standard roads or whatever. Well, they were depressurizing the tires, and sometimes the seals would give out and just go completely flat. So now you got a flat Chinese
Well,
tire on your busted Russian, launcher, and those tires are like what, 300 pounds a piece? And you can't put a jack on one of those when you're sitting in mud. That doesn't work. So they're stuck there,
uh,
right? They're pulling each other out. You see pictures of like they're all running in a column, and then they turn around and they're four abreast because they're trying to get around that asshole who got stuck and blew a tire. Stuff like that, right? So you got that.
yep.
You've got poor maintenance. There was a picture of a truck where it sheared every lug nut off one of the wheels. Like they all just broke. They had another one where the tire clearly exploded because the CTIS overpressurized a split rim, and if you've ever seen a split rim, they're like one of the deadliest fucking things in a tire shop. It exploded.
HBS B2s or even the B52s, because we got a couple B52s over there.
We will never give away a B2 Spirit. Never. Ever.
No.
Now, what we could do, and I jokingly said this, and honestly, what I'm about to say, I didn't pull this out of my ass, okay? This actually came from Mike Pompeo 3 days ago. And then it
Oh,
was
Mike.
and then it was repeated by General Keith Kellogg, who actually devised a brilliant plan today. So, this isn't me coming up with this. There are military minds at work. And you're going to hear this in the news lately. We can't get involved directly, but we have covert ops capabilities. So that is directly, just indirectly, right?
Right.
So we're never going to give away a B2 stealth. No way. That'd be like, I don't
It would
know.
be more. It would be better to lease them B52s instead.
No, that would be like, I got to think of a good example of this. That would be like Machine Gun Kelly giving up Kim Kardashian. Bad example. I'm sorry. Anyway,
Yeah, that's a really bad example.
no, we're not going to give away the B2. It's the tech is too top secret still, even though we all know it's just spray on bedliner. Joke. No, what we could do is we can say that we're going to lend lease, like HVS is saying. We can lend lease some B1 spirits. Wait, is it called the Spirit?
I don't think it's called the Spirit.
No. What's it called? Damn it, I forgot. We can lend them B1s. And then land them in Poland. And then just paint a Polish flag on the tail. And then use some of those duffel bags full of Ukrainian Air Force uniforms that are definitely coming across the Polish border. Like, you're not going to convince me otherwise. Those guys are walking in with duffel bags that are about to burst. What are in those?
Yeah.
They're Ukrainian Air Force uniforms, right? And they're going to pull a page right out of Russia's playbook circa 1953. They're going to wear North Korean uniforms and climb into MiGs, squeezed into these tiny little uniforms made for guys that are only 4'11", and they're going to fly the MiGs themselves, right? Well,
We hope.
covert ops is we paint a Ukrainian flag on a B-1. Is it this? It's, I don't. God damn it! I got a Lancer. That's what it is. We lend lease some Lancers. We lend lease some B-52s. We paint Ukrainian flags on them. Ukrainian people coming across the border bring Ukrainian Air Force uniforms in duffel bags. Our covert ops put on the uniforms, fly the B-52, and create the Highway of Death on a scale never seen before. Because the Highway of Death wasn't actually that big compared to the size of this convoy, right? And if you don't want to kill them, like, what if you don't kill them? What if you take away their ability to want to defend the convoy? What if you, I don't know, bring in a flight of Chinooks and fill the Mark 19s that are on both sides of one and just, you know, bloop away as many tear gas canisters as you can into that convoy, choke them out, make them run away. And then you just let the Ukrainian military walk in and just take everything. Like, there you go. Take what you can get. You don't have to kill them all. I mean, some of them are going to stop and defend. You're going to have to kill a few, but you can just tear gas the whole thing. Fuck it. Anyway, let's get into the stories, because, I mean, I'm still trying to paint pictures, and yes, it's starting to come off as conjecture, so I didn't want to do that. That was never my intention. Let's start with the stories of the day. I've got a lot of pictures to share with you. I've got the attempt of trying to show you a video about General Kellogg's proposal for how to implement a nationwide no-flight zone. And if what he's saying is correct, he's brilliant, because he's using doctrine that has been on the books forever. And it could be very easily done. And I'm sure after that interview, somebody in the Pentagon probably said, we should probably discuss this, because it's a very reasonable possibility. So if I can get the video to play, I will share it with you guys. Anyway, let's get started with the stories, because this is obviously going to run super long now that we had this long of an intro. I do apologize for all that, by the way. Let's have a little fun with the stories. Yeah, fuck it. We'll just do that. 8:49 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This was actually where we picked off yesterday, from the news from yesterday. It's, oh my god, we have a gunpowder beauty. How are you on your feet? Didn't you just have a child? So glad to see you, though. Congratulations. I saw the pictures. That's freaking awesome. 3:49 a.m. Ukrainian local time. So this was a, I guess, press conference or presser response to the situation last night at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And it is. So here's the picture. And it comes from Secretary Jennifer Granholm. I can't remember who keeps pointing out that they knew who she was before she was this, but okay. She confirms that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant reactors are being safely shut down at the time that she posted this, right? And there's no elevated radiation readings that were detected, which is a bit contrary to the stuff that came out last night, because they said there was a spike. Then again, it could just be whatever, you know, kicked up from dust or dirt or debris or just whatever, right? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, this story I found kind of interesting, because what she's doing is she's trying to bring calm and order back to what could have spun out into chaos, right? Just levels of escalation and chaos. And we talk about levels of escalation in the 2A community, for instance. So
All the time.
how quickly a situation can get out of control over a stupid argument when someone finally lifts their shirt and shows off their piece. It's like, really? Did you have to go full retard? You know, that kind of thing. So I think what she's trying to do is she's trying to, like, calm the nerves of a very nervous world watching what could have been the world's worst bottle rocket incident if a reactor went off.
and I've got pictures of I've got a ground schematic of the whole area, and when you see how close these reactors are together, if one goes, they could have all went. Like, it's pretty scary. So,
Sounds more like a domino situation
yes,
than a.
yes, and it's set up just like that, which this must be an older design. It's one of the largest nuclear plants in Europe, so
Well,
it stands to
it was
reason it's probably
probably
been there
also
a long
built
time.
by the Soviets too.
Was it?
I'm guessing.
Well, the layout is. It doesn't look like the architecture of a modern layout, I guess is a good way to put it. So it's probably been around a while. But anyway, she's trying to calm the nerves of a nervous people. So that's what we're starting with today. Uh, this is the early morning hours. So this is technically day 9. It's just for me in Central Standard Time or in Eastern Standard Time when she did that release, it was day 8 evening for us as people intaking this information, right? So there's always this lapse between days between us in the West and them on site. So anyway, let's move on. 10:20 p.m. Central Standard Time. So this was still yesterday for us, but it was 6:20 a.m. So we're about to hit dawn. So dawn is typically where the media and those on the ground can finally start to take inventory of last night's aerial shenanigans, I guess is a good way to put it. And that's also when the Russian military starts their morning ops, basically, because they can see again, because their night vision apparently is atrocious. So anyway, according to the State Emergency Service at 6:20 a.m., the fire in Zaporizhizia's nuclear power plant, the training building in, was it Energodar or something like that, it was extinguished. So the fire that everyone was worried about was put out by 6:20
Yeah, it's an
a.m.
old Soviet design.
Okay, so yeah, the fire was put out,
Because I'm looking at
and
it, they said the plant was the construction began on certain areas like Unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like
yes,
1980 to 86.
okay,
So
so they built one
it's
reactor
a
every
Soviet.
year.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, they did domino it then. All right,
yeah.
that's fine. Shit, I left my drops back at my office.
So
Anyway, so by 6:20 a.m. the fires were out and the radiation levels seemed normal. And if I remember right, when they began their approach at this place and when they took over Chernobyl days earlier, the Russian Federation contacted the IAEA and they said, "Would you mind monitoring this? We don't want it to go up either." Or at least that's what they say in their PR, right? So maybe they were just trying to take it so they can keep it? Whatever. Anyway, let's move on. 1:28 Central Standard Time AM. It is now 9:28. So mostly everybody on site is awake and they're playing catch up right now. Like, what happened last night? What are we doing today? Are there any meetings? Is Zelensky still alive? Yada yada yada, right? This is everyone's gaining their bearings because even these poor guys, they got to get some sleep. So there's a shift change, let's say. Again, Ukraine is caught saying the quiet part out loud, and it seems to be falling on the world's deaf ears, much to their detriment. They're quoted as saying, Russia's logic of war, or of this war, is to increase missile and airstrikes on civilian infrastructure, large cities, and civilians. Only closed skies will abruptly stop the escalation. It is time for Western partners to take responsibility to help end this war. This was said by the advisor, or an advisor to the head office of the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. So it's one of his spokespeople. The silence and refusal to close the skies is what will build the animosity to the United States, NATO, and the EU. Sound familiar? I'm pretty sure I've been saying that for days. Bet on that.
sounds familiar.
2 minutes later, I actually wrote this literally 2 minutes later. Literally 2 minutes later, the Ukrainian, was it MP? Oh, a Ukrainian member of parliament, that's right. also asks for the same. Now, this particular person, she had left the country and she's been in the United States. She's in New York City and she's become very accessible to the press. So she's sort of like a parliamentary liaison. Sorry, that's hard to say. Um,
Hmm.
for Ukraine to the United States. Her name is Alexandra Ustinova, and she's been very vocal. She weighed in on how the United States and Europe can help Ukraine fend off against Russian invasion. She's quoted as saying, "Civilians are going to keep dying otherwise." And she's not wrong. Like, she's
Nope.
been pointing this out for days. Now, I know what I'm doing right now is I'm building a case of why we should get involved. I'm just reading the news right now, okay? My opinion is not being injected into this, but they're making the case. 1 minute later, like my RSS feed freaking drove me nuts. Uh, the Kiev Independent, which is their news organization, releases photos that show the capital is looking less and less like a modern city and more like the trap-laden beaches of Normandy 1944. And I do have a photo for you because I think what they had done was they had brought in a bunch of Czech hedgehog tank traps. Look familiar? I know you're watching this on your thing too, so you probably get to see it.
I'm waiting for it to,
Okay. Yeah,
to
because it's a
load.
little behind.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're starting to lay out these tank hedgehog traps all over the city streets because they're getting to the point now where they're starting to understand, look, this convoy's been sitting here for 5 days.
There
They're
it is.
obviously either in a holding pattern or they're waiting for the South to catch up, but they're coming. So they're not waiting around for them to come. They're making preparations for this. Now, I don't know how heavy those things are. I know they're I-beams. Like, I don't think the average guy can walk up and just push one and roll it out of the way, right? But how much time is that going to buy you? Like, you get a tank to stop up against that, you better have guys with like RPGs or javelins on every rooftop. Just waiting for that. But whatever. Those pictures were released this morning. It was 9:31 a.m. Central or Ukrainian local time. So it's early morning. The picture's on the left, that is. The picture on the right is a colorized photo of Normandy Beach. I just wanted to give you like a visual comparison that what is old is new again. They're still effective. They're still usable. So there they are. They're not using dragon's teeth, which I thought would have been, I don't know, easier to get because they're just concrete bollards, but whatever. I mean, if these were available, go for it, right? Rock it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the tank traps. Let's move on. 2:42 a.m. It is now 10:42 a.m. Ukrainian time. Breakfast is over. Tea is over. This was reported post arrival, so I'm just going to leave that caveat. They reported this, but it happened hours earlier. Uh,
Hmm.
President Biden will meet with Finnish President Sauli Niinisto Friday at the White House as the Nordic country molds a closer relationship and even joining NATO amid the invasion of Ukraine. More than 50% of the Finnish people support joining NATO for the first time, according to a
We
recent poll
discussed that
conducted in the
yesterday.
country. This happened today. Like, I saw the press conference today.
We discussed the polling of the NATO people of the Finnish people. How many went
Ah,
to,
no,
and
that
this
was
plays
Norway and
into it.
Sweden yesterday.
No, that was Sweden and Finland.
Norway and Sweden. Finland was
Oh,
today. Well, at least the president was there today. You might
hmm.
be right. It's all one big day to me. I got no sleep.
All right, all right.
But I
We're
mean,
split.
okay, basically what we're saying is all the Scandinavian countries. That's not. I'm not being rude about it. It's Scandinavian, Scandinavian, right? Norwegian, Scandinavian. They all want to be a part of NATO now, and to be perfectly honest, a lot of pundits are saying that the one thing that Russia has done very, very effectively in this thing is really boost the applicant numbers for NATO, right? And it's isolated them. So, if anything, that's the golden peanut in the turd. Like, all of a sudden, everybody's on board to be part of NATO. Okay. That means there's so many more nations that can contribute financially to funding it. So we don't have to. Not a bad idea.
Okay. And every NATO nation that springs away from Russia is just one more nail in Russia's coffin. So that's fine too. This is nothing against the Russian people. Those people, they want to be capitalists, most of them. The ones that are protesting and getting arrested and disappeared. Like, all that's fine. It's just one derelict, outdated dinosaur of a dictator and a couple of FSB yes men. They want to, like, relive the old times one last time before the old man kicks the bucket, essentially. This is obviously France's fault for not sending Ukraine hedgehogs from Normandy. They did. The Czechs did it, man. Anyway, let's move on. Sorry. Let's see. Did I get all this? In January, only 28% were in favor of this. The two men will discuss the U.S.-Finnish defense relationship, which is very strong and in fact complements Finland's close partnership with NATO. Okay, yeah, that's a PR ball cupping. Sorry. An hour later, it's now 11:43 a.m. Ukrainian local time. U.S. Secretary. Oh, I got a picture of this. Sorry, let me pull this up. I'm making a terrible thing. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Brussels, Belgium, Friday morning, saying that the U.S. and its allies came together with, quote, speed, unity, and determination after Russia's premeditated invasion of Ukraine. He's in Brussels for meetings with the European Union, G7, and NATO allies. He was quoted as saying, every ally in one way or another is coming to Ukraine's assistance, adding that the leaders are, quote, preparing for NATO's future, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine will inform NATO's future. We seek no conflict, but if conflict comes to us, we're ready for it, he said. Blinken is in Europe for a week, heading to Poland, Moldova, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And I think in my comment is... Oh yeah, my comment was just a joke. He arrives in Brussels... Wait, why is he wearing a mask? Didn't COVID-19 end literally the day before the State of the Union address? Did someone not tell him that? COVID's over. Somebody should remind him of that. It's all over now. There is no COVID. At least I'm foreshadowing a story that's at the end of this today. Anyway, a few minutes later, let's fast forward to 11:52. So this is just before lunchtime in the Ukraine. Let's see. Where did... this was an interview with Mike Pompeo. And he said that the U.S. should immediately, quote, do the right and obvious thing and recognize Taiwan as a free and sovereign country. He wrote this Thursday night in a series of Twitter messages, but he was later recalling them in his interview. Pompeo's comments came as he visited Taiwan's president Tsai Ing-wen in Taipei, and as war continued to rage in the Ukraine late Thursday into Friday, with fire at the nuclear power plant bringing a potentially frightening new scenario into play, although the fire was later reported to be extinguished. A possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan has loomed as a possibility in the wake of Russia's Ukraine invasion, with some foreign affairs experts arguing U.S. adversaries may be eager to test how willing and able the Biden administration is able to respond to such acts of aggression. So they're poking at the perimeters, basically. Oh, well, according to Pink, Blinken's mask can save him from nuclear contamination. Well, excuse me, I didn't know that. Thank you. I learned a thing today. I finally got to say that. All right, so we're going to fast forward a couple of minutes. Like, a lot of these news stories, they just bang, 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 bang. They all come in waves, right? And I'm going to try my best to pronounce this one. I didn't get enough time to study how to do it, but here's a picture. Those guys are, well, whatever. Staff at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Enerodar, that's like the small town outside, right, sent a message to the Ukrainian media and government authorities warning that the Russian troops that took the plant are trying to lay down explosives in order to blackmail the entirety of Europe. Okay, so I've heard two different versions of this story. One was that after the fighting had stopped, they immediately began planting mines all around the perimeter. Later that day, I heard that they were holding the nuclear power plant employees kind of hostage to keep it running as they were planting explosives near the reactors. Sort of a come and take it or we'll blow it, that kind of situation, right? So anyway, they will be trying to mine the nuclear power plant and blackmail the whole of Europe. Zaporizhizia's nuclear power plant employees wrote in a message early Friday morning as Russian troops attacked the plant and setting it on fire. Misha Ganitsky, Director General of the Ukrainian Independent Information Agency of News, it's UNIAN, translated that the interview earlier in the morning stating that Kadyrovsky attacked the power plant. Another message reads, "Currently, there is a battle between them and the National Guard of Ukraine. This is Kadyrovsky's group for sure." Kadyrovsky refers to soldiers that look like the forces of Chechen President Ramzan Kadyrov. Many Chechens are fighting in Putin's army. Ganitsky told the news that Ukrainian officials fear that the Russians can use this fact that they control the nuclear power plant to organize pressure on the Ukraine. They can then use that station like a giant hostage. The workers warn that they're putting explosive materials near the buildings and reactors of the plant to provide pressure on the Ukrainian army and its people. So yeah, basically what they're doing is they've become a nuclear power without having to use a nuclear weapon. They just weaponized the power plant. And if they blow it, it's just one giant bomb, isn't it? That's what I was saying earlier in the intro. You can become a nuclear power without even having a nuclear weapon. This is the tactic that they have just taught the world. That's a scary lesson. Very scary lesson. The finest of apes has arrived. Good evening, sir. And he says, "So, Dr. Strangelove 2022. Yes. Yes. Let's move on. Okay, so this looks... Oh, you're going to love this. So this is just me being a cynical asshole. I'm just prefacing that right now. Here's a picture. You're going to love this. 8:48 Central Standard Time. I almost spit my coffee across the room when I saw this. Ammo Inc. I've heard that name 3 times today after I saw this story. Reveals... Now, I can't pronounce this town. I think it's Monotawak. Does that sound about right? They're in Wisconsin. The Monotawak-based company is donating 1 million rounds of 7.62 by 39 ammo. Now, listen. I've been beat up about this already by several people. For an army, that's not a lot of ammo. I get it. For a guy like me, woohoo! That's a lot of ammo, right? But the fact remains. 1 million rounds of 7.62 by 39 ammo. Look at that picture and tell me that doesn't piss you off. Because what do we have right now? A shortage. And yet we can donate brass-cased 7.62-39 while the rest of us scrounge around and scavenge for steel-cased Tula garbage. In comparison, right? It's a joke. Anyway, did the news just reveal that the ammo shortages of years past are bullshit? Where did they get the powder? What about the primers? Did you notice that the same gun control harpies in the US screaming to disarm its people are now cheering for the success that this donation will help end the hostilities of another country's army? What the fuck?
I know. It's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
they're cheering that Ukraine gave their people guns and whatnot.
Yeah.
But, the day before, they were trying
Full
to take
auto
away
ones.
our AR-15s.
Full auto ones.
Yeah, I know,
Select
full
fire
auto
ones.
ones.
Not us. My caption, if you can't see it because it's kind of small. Ammo Inc. donates 1 million rounds of 7.62 by 39 brass cased. Wait, where did they get the primers and the powder? Is the shortage of ammo bullshit? Did we not only end COVID-19, but also end ammo shortages and gun control too? What a week! Like America had a great week. All this is over.
Yeah, I wish.
Sarcasm. I saw that and man, coffee just out of every orifice of my face. I was just like, holy shit.
I'm surprised you weren't at work.
No, I got banker's hours apparently. So I'm told. Anyway.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Uh, I think I did this one slightly out of sequence. It says 5 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I think I did this one slightly out of sequence, but I have a photo here. Yeah, this is it. 1 p.m. Ukrainian time, because it was the timestamp on that particular tweet. I think that's why it jacked up on my timeline. Ukraine makes a formal request to the Red Cross to assist in negotiating humanitarian evacuation corridors. Now, it's my understanding that this has already been sort of agreed upon. But it only reflects like the western fringes of Ukraine, which has got no military or tactical significance to the Russian army. The caveat to this, or the important part of this, is the corridors also protect the skies, meaning the Russian military agrees not to strafe it, essentially. So it's something. I don't know. I'm building into something with this, so just kind of keep this in the back of your mind. Let's move on. 6:03 a.m. It's now 2 o'clock in Ukraine. And I've got this photo for you. Bing. This is me just fucking around with Photoshop a little bit. Russia's censorship spreads. Russia's state media regulator, Roskomnadzor. I didn't take the time to learn this one. Roskomnadzor. On Friday.
Whoa, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. Roskomnadzor. So it's Roskomnadzor. I think so. Yeah. Anyway, on Friday it said it's blocking access to the websites of 5 international media organizations. The blocked websites are those of the BBC, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Latvia-based website Medusa, and German broadcaster Deutsche Welle, which are among the largest foreign news outlets with Russian language news operations. Citing that state agency, this was citing state agency RIA Novosti. The sites were blocked for hosting what Roskomnadzor, that's going to mess with me, Roskomnadzor, there you go, told RIA that it was false information about Russian military actions in Ukraine, including reports of attacks on civilians and the Russians' military losses. The development comes as the BBC announced this week that it will broadcast its World Service program over shortwave radio frequencies so it can be listened to those by Kiev and parts of Russia. Not bad, right? So the photo is the Russians blowing up a TV and radio tower. Yeah, this didn't happen. The BBC lies, comrades. That's what the picture's for. Anyway, moving on. All my jokes during this conflict have just not gone over well. Alright, so about 5 minutes later, we have moved forward, and it is now 2:08, and a Ukrainian member of parliament is warning that cities like Kyiv will be the next Aleppo unless the West steps up and backs its vocal support of Ukraine, which we have, with significant...
Hold on.
What?
We need a libertarian to say, what's an Aleppo?
Oh, god damn it, shut up. What's an Aleppo? I remember that joke. So anyway.
Sorry, it was mandatory.
It's okay. So anyway, let's see. Man, you derailed me. So it says Kiev will become the next Aleppo unless the West steps up and backs its vocal support of Ukraine, which it has, with significantly more action than it is already taking to combat Russian invasions. This chick, Alexandra Ustinova, that girl from earlier, from the Ministry of Parliament, the one that's here in New York, she said that more than 2,000 civilians have been killed so far in the Russian invasion, and that number could rise dramatically as Russia launches attacks on cities, or larger cities like Kharkiv and Kyiv. Kharkiv and Kyiv, yeah. It's a disaster. Kharkiv is in ruins, and this was the second biggest city in Ukraine, with over a 2 million population, It's literally in ruins now. She said, Aleppo is one of Syria's largest cities and was largely destroyed in the country's open civil war a decade ago. If I'm not mistaken, that was destroyed by the Russians, right? Ustinova said that the army has stopped the Russians coming into the city, but the sky is still open, meaning Russia can deploy missile and bombs that are hitting civilian populations sheltered in those cities, which is what they've been doing every night for the last 9 days. That's when they're the most effective, was with their military or with their missile attacks at night. All right, moving on. And I have another picture for you. Bing! Think of the children. That's a really cool hat that one kid's wearing. Looks like a bear. Anyway, 7:10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3:10 p.m. Ukrainian local time. UNICEF releases a statement on Friday saying that about 500,000 children, 500,000 children, have been forced to flee from their homes in Ukraine over the past week due to Russia's invasion, calling the exodus unprecedented in scale and speed. If the violence doesn't stop, many more children will be forced to flee their country in a very short time space. This is from James Elder, a spokesman for the United Nations Children's Fund. And we fear many more will be killed. He said UNICEF is sending large amounts of humanitarian supplies to Ukraine to help those in need, and also providing emergency training to pediatricians who are being sent to the region. Think of the children. Don't... Ooh, Patrick. I tried that joke for 3 days. It's not going... I can't do it. It just... It's poor form. I lost my Kharkivs. Anyway, shouldn't have said
I
that.
lost my Kharkivs and
Anyway, an hour later, it's now 4:11, so we're an hour away from the curfew. So usually around this time, I don't think it's an air raid siren they put off, but they put out some sort of siren to kind of let people know that it's time to wrap it up and start locking yourselves down for the night because they can't stop the missiles. So NATO... Oh, wait, I got a picture here. Oh, it's the same picture. It's this guy. Yes, I modified the backdrop. It's not full of Gizzard Gary logos like what I did here. NATO paints a giant yellow stripe down their collective backs and offhandedly abandons Ukraine in to their aerial fate. Okay, maybe I wrote that part. NATO nations will not impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Huh? What?
You might have wrote that part, yeah.
Yeah, I might have wrote that part. Anyway, NATO nations will not impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine, despite pleas from some in Ukraine. Secretary Jens Stoltenberg called it a, quote, painful decision, saying that NATO has a responsibility not to escalate the conflict by engaging Russian forces directly in Ukraine, either on the ground or in the air. Enforcing a no-fly zone would involve NATO planes in Ukraine, potentially shooting down Russian planes. You mean solving Ukraine's problems? Stoltenberg said Friday. We understand the desperation, but we also believe that if we did that, we would end up with something that could end in a full-fledged war in Europe involving many more countries and causing much more human suffering, he said. Now, look, I'm not saying he's wrong. He's right. It would, right? But you have to remember who you're dealing with here, okay? In American politics, you have two major voices. You have what you call the conservative movement, and then you have like the liberal movement. The liberal movement's sort of broken in half right now. It's full of extremists on one end, and we just don't like what conservatives say on the other. Like, you can disagree without being a dick, right? Well, that's half of the liberal party. The other half is the squad, and its ilk, right? And what he's saying is that they can end up in a full-fledged war with Europe involving many more countries, right? But, see, the saying here is you'll never convince a liberal to see things your way, right? You just can't, because conservatives typically respond to things with logic and facts and numbers and, evidence. Whereas your typical liberal, I'm not saying all, but typical, emotional outbursts, right? Whatever's trendy, memes, things like that, right? They live on the meme. So he's saying that NATO would end up in a full-fledged war. He's saying that involving yourselves in forcing a no-fly zone would escalate the situation. He's right. But you see, they're facing an enemy who has had a doctrine since 1960 of de-escalation by escalating. That's what the Russians do. They scare you into the idea that they're going to do something outlandish, and then everyone just falls for it. Nobody ever calls their bluff. And because no one has called their bluff for the last 62 years, they've developed a reputation of the boogeyman. Oh my God, don't mess with Russians. They say crazy things. They just might do them. Well, no one's ever called their bluff, so how do we know they're going to do it? See, the problem is you gotta... I think right now, and I could be wrong, but just from what you see, man on the street or on the ground in Ukraine, their infantry is garbage. Their command and control leadership is fractured garbage. They're not the elite Russian military that we were led to believe during the Cold War. They're just not. And I mean, even if you think about before the Cold War, how elite were they? They killed 20 million of their own during World War II. That's not what a good military does. Anyway, point is, actually, I don't even use Photoshop Fine 8. Most of this crap, I'm a master of MS Paint. I really am. I don't do anything too elaborate. Like, there's a lot of basic graphical things that I can't do. I just can't. Because if I took the time to learn Photoshop or whatever, I probably could. I just never took the time. Like, what I need to do with the pictures I modify, that's good enough. Like, it'll do.
Photoshop is not that hard. It's really easy. It's simple.
I got enough crap to do. I got enough crap to do.
You're just lazy.
Dude, I work 9 jobs for 1 paycheck. How many jobs do you work? Exactly.
All right.
All right, let's move on. So anyway, now we're going to fast forward a couple more minutes. The same NATO chief, the same one, that guy right there, Stoltenberg, right? Jens Stoltenberg.
NATO chief asshole.
Well, yeah. That denied you air cover in Ukraine, has accused Russia of deploying cluster bombs and other prohibited weapons during its invasion. We have seen the use of cluster bombs. We have seen reports of use of other types of weapons which will be in violation of international law, and of course NATO allies and partners are collecting information and are monitoring very closely what's going on in Ukraine, Stoltenberg says. He spoke at a press conference in Brussels on Friday and reiterated that the war itself is a blatant violation of international law, adding that he welcomed the International Criminal Court, the ICC, to an investigation. The question I have is...
Hold on. He can
What?
say anything he fucking wants. Unless NATO takes action, whatever
You're
he's
putting
saying...
the cart before my horse, dude. The question is, you see it, you acknowledge it, and you know it, and you still choose to do nothing about it. See, then I ask this is a rhetorical question, right? Why does the U.S. have to send our troops to die first before NATO or the UN makes a move? Remember we were talking about this in the intro, right? He's baiting us to want to take the lead because he's too chicken shit to do it himself. That's what it is. That's at the end of the day, that's what it is. He's talking a good game to try to motivate us to be like, okay, look, just get out of the way. We'll do it for you because obviously you're a coward, right? That's what it is. Like, somebody walk up to this guy and rip the sleeves off his jacket, dress his ass down, and drop him in the middle of Kyiv at 9:59 p.m. as the first missile hits the building over his head. and then ask him, so what are you going to do about that? And when he's done pissing himself and changing his shorts, he will come back to the UN or NATO and go, we really need to do something about this. I'm not going back out there. That place is insane. But because he's so far away in his cushy little NATO meetings, he doesn't understand the perspective of the man on the street or the woman in the bombed out building who's trying to keep her kids from losing their shit and trying to figure out how the hell she's going to escape now that her city is almost completely surrounded by Russians who are looting buildings because they don't have enough food, and now there's stories of them raping the local women. Yeah, that's a lovely place to be right now. Did I kind of catch your point at the same time there, Mike?
Yeah, I guess so. It's
Okay.
just the whole situation ain't.
It sucks. The whole thing sucks, but war sucks. It's not supposed to be fun.
No, I know it is, and I know it's just,
All right. 9:59 a.m. my time.
just depressed, I guess, about it.
Yeah. We're an hour into Ukraine's curfew now. It's a minute to 6. And I mean, I guess this is kind of obvious. Russians could face prison sentences of up to 15 years for spreading information that goes against the Russian government's position on the war in Ukraine. Okay. I mean, we've been seeing them arrest their own people. This stands to be modus operandi, right?
So what's new?
Yeah. The Russian parliament voted unanimously, probably under the threat of death. Let's be honest, right? You will vote for this, or you will wear your wife's head as a hat. That kind of thing, right? The Russian parliament voted unanimously Friday to approve a draft law decriminalizing the intentional spreading of what Russia deems to be fake reports. Russian authorities have repeatedly decried reports of Russian military setbacks or civilian deaths in Ukraine as, quote, fake reports. State media outlets refer to Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a special military operation rather than a war or an invasion. The draft law was approved by the lower and upper houses of parliament in quick succession and is now set to be signed into law by Vladimir Putin to take effect as soon as Saturday. The Speaker of the lower house, oh God, here we go. Vyacheslav Volodin. Sorry, that actually wasn't so bad.
That wasn't so bad.
Well, I had his name written in Cyrillic, so I had to stop and read it.
Oh, come on.
I'm really rusty on Russian. Anyway, it is possible that by tomorrow... Huh? Well, I mean, look how long it took me to write yours in the Discord.
Yeah, it took a while.
It is possible that by tomorrow its rules will enforce those lied and made statements discrediting our armed forces to bear very grave punishment, Volodin said. I want everyone to understand and for society to understand that we are doing this to protect our soldiers and officers and to protect the truth. This is like the CNN Stasi of Russia, isn't it? Wait a minute. What did he... Oh, so Pootie Poo is Zap Brannigan's time-traveled bastard child. Yes, actually. He just doesn't get to wear a really cool jumpsuit with a Speedo. Ugh. All right, let's move on. I can't tell you the words I used when I captioned this photo because it would probably get us struck. But here's the photo. Anyway, 10 a.m. Now it is 6 p.m. We're 1 hour into the Ukrainian lockdown, or curfew rather. And it the COVID bullshit continues. I might have wrote that part. Didn't I jokingly ask days ago, is Russia's incursion into Ukraine considered a super spreader event? The World Health Organization warned this week that the conflict in Ukraine could lead to increased COVID-19 transmission, speaking at a Wednesday news briefing. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom, oh, I can't pronounce this guy's last name, but he looks like Neil deGrasse Tyson almost, said Ukraine had experienced a surge of cases before Russia's invasion. Low rates of testing, he said, mean there is likely to be significant undetected transmission of the virus, and coupled with low vaccination coverage, the increased risk of large numbers of people developing severe disease. Fuck out of here, man. Didn't the WHO get the memo? COVID ended the day before President Biden's State of the Union address.
No, no. COVID ended when Russia invaded Ukraine.
No, 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 no.
Oh
It,
yes. Oh
it
yes.
ended the day before the State of the Union because all of a sudden nobody wore a mask in DC. It was cured. It's all over. Like the border's secure and COVID is over and the ammo shortage is over. Didn't you get the memo? I mean, is Washington the only people who know this? Must be. I mean, I didn't learn about it till today. Shit. Sorry. I'm being such a jerk tonight. Okay. Next picture. Bing! Here's that picture I was telling you about, Mike. These are the reactors at Zaporizhzhia's nuclear power plant. Notice how they're set up just like dominoes. Also notice how ridiculously close to the river they are. Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hold on. I still
It's
see
coming.
a picture
It's
of people
coming.
walking.
It's coming. So I'll read
Oh.
the story as you wait for the photo.
All right.
UN Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, speaking to the Security Council Friday, said, "By the grace of God, the world narrowly avoided a nuclear catastrophe last night at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which Russian forces attacked and started a fire. We all waited to exhale as we watched the horrific situation unfold in real time," she continued. "I applaud the ability of Ukrainian operators to keep all 6 reactors in safe condition while under attack, and to report that they were able... Wait. To what? They were able to do something. It didn't come out right. They were able to... something their nuclear regulator. I guess it didn't translate properly.
As I said, those reactors were originally built by the Soviet Union. So
Yep.
yeah. So Soviet Union did not have aesthetics in mind.
Meh. So, Russia's attack last night put Europe's largest nuclear power plant at grave risk. It was incredibly reckless and dangerous, and it threatened the safety of civilians across Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. The United States remains highly concerned that Russian military forces controlling the Chernobyl site have not permitted operators there to have a shift change since last week. She also said, "This is highly irresponsible behavior and causes grave concern for continued safe operations at both sites." Now, there was a after action report that kind of leaked, and it said that the artillery shells that were hitting this plant, one got into within 1,500 feet of the central reactor, which means out of those 6, it landed somewhere close to the 2 middle ones, 1,500 feet. Now, it sounds like a long distance, but a concussive shockwave or shrapnel from artillery can do 1,500 feet in no time flat. I mean, just think what a 9mm plus P round could do in no time flat, speed-wise, right? 1,500 feet, that ain't shit. So, yeah, people had reason to worry yesterday. This is the way I look at it. Say that one of the reactors in the middle took a direct hit, and it goes. And like you said, they're set up like dominoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That close to the river that feeds the Black Sea.
Yep.
What's going to happen to Turkey, which is just down the street, south? What's going to happen to... I forgot the country that's immediately to the right. Is it Kazakhstan? What about them? What about the aerial fallout? What if there's a windstorm? What if there's a lot of wind that's pushing to the northeast and it actually starts poisoning Russia? Like, it's danger on a scale that you can't really calculate. It's incalculable because this has never happened before. I mean, I guess you could talk about 3 Mile Island, but it wasn't attacked. So it's kind of hard to say. Let's move on. Man, I can't believe I have this much stuff still. Okay. 12:03. I finally made it to noon where I am. So it is now... Wow. I think I got this wrong. It's 10:03. Yeah, it's 10:03. Oh, no. Oh, sorry. I'm not reading this right. It's 10:03 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I'm going somewhere else. right?
That's yeah.
Yeah, I'm going somewhere else. Like you're probably wondering what the hell I'm about to tell you. So, bing, here we go. This is a couple of the big players that have cut ties with Russia. Just for reference. Microsoft President and Vice Chair Brad Smith announced Friday that the tech company will, quote, suspend all new sales of Microsoft products and services in Russia. Like the rest of the world, we're horrified, angered, and saddened by the images and news coming from the war in Ukraine and condemn this unjustified, unprovoked, and unlawful invasion by Russia. Our most our single most impactful area of work almost certainly is the protection of Ukraine's cybersecurity. We continue to work proactively to help cybersecurity officials in Ukraine defend against Russian attacks, including most recently a cyber attack against against a major Ukrainian broadcaster. So, no more Microsoft in Russia. Does that mean they're just not going to get automatic updates?
Well,
Like,
they don't need Microsoft in Russia. They've got what, that React OS.
I don't know. All I know is I don't want automatic updates. Can I get that? Can I just claim to be Russian for a day so you can turn my automatic updates off? That'd be great. Like they always come in at the most inopportune times. Whatever. It'd probably break my freaking OBS anyway, and that would suck. Let's move on. All right, so now I'm going to go back, to theater. A minute later, 8:04 p.m. Ukrainian local time. Russia has blocked access to some foreign media websites. So first it took down TV and radio in their area, and now it's going after media websites and accused them of spreading false information about the war in Ukraine. This is another play on the story from earlier. Russian communications yeah, it's the same one. Never mind. They repeated it basically.
Not surprised.
Well, let me see if there's any add-on bits to this. Rebecca Koffler, a former Defense Intelligence Agency officer, said that Russia would crack down further and possibly ban broadcast by all Western media as Putin faced trouble at home controlling the narrative about the invasion, which he still calls a special military operation. Okay, so this was just a reiteration of the earlier story. Sorry, got redundant there. About a minute later, oh, that's why I did it. About a minute later, I wrote, "Oh, never mind. We don't have to get involved at all. We're all saved." Vice President Kneepads has announced that she's heading to Poland. That's all I've got. There's no pun. The trip is a joke already. Kamala Harris announced that she was going to Poland at noon Central Standard Time.
Yeah. How's that border situation looking?
It's solved. Didn't you know?
I wasn't aware that it was solved.
Oh yeah, it was Biden. Dude, Biden's going to be remembered in history as like the savior of humanity. I mean, he ended COVID, he fixed the border situation, and he's about to fix Ukraine by sending the girl with the world's thickest knee pads, who never received a single delegate, to go speak on behalf of our country. Man, I mean, what a powerful move. Jesus Christ. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, you're laying it on. You're laying it on a little too
I'm
fast.
being such a dick tonight. I'm sorry. This is what a week of no sleepness looks like.
Oh, quit your bitching.
All right, so here's that breakdown picture I was talking about in the intro today. This is a breakdown of aid to the Ukraine. Breakdown of U.S. aid to Ukraine reveals the incredible speed at which it doesn't reveal speed, it just tells you the stuff. Anyway, at which the American government provided assistance, compressing a process that normally takes months into hours and days. The U.S. has provided $350 million in military aid in the forms of weapons from U.S. stockpiles over the last week, bringing the total aid to Ukraine to roughly $1 billion over the last calendar year. A new breakdown of that aid shows that the U.S. compressed the process to provide this aid in just a matter of hours and days. You can see how fast we're moving to get security assistance on the battlefield, senior defense officials said, noting that officials remain very impressed with how Ukrainians are fielding those weapons. They're having a real impact.
No, they're not.
No, they are. They really are. The Javelin thing is remarkable. Like they're doing, you know that saying that the U.S. Army gets the new weapons and then the Marines make the old ones legendary? It's kind of like that. They're showing the world how effective man pads can be.
That's bad.
No, that's a great thing. Because this is David killing Goliath in the air. And okay, people are saying, well, then why do you need a no-fly zone? Because you have to remember that a javelin, well, javelin doesn't have that range at all. It was like 2 or 3 miles, right? A man-pad surface-to-air missile. I think the highest one I've seen effectively for a man-portable fired one is 14,800 feet. So it's better just to have jets in the air and you can catch them 20 miles out. That kind of thing. That would definitely be a better deterrent instead of waiting until they're literally right overhead and halfway down into their attack approach. Yeah, might be a good idea. Anyway, let's move on. Just remember
Moving
this
on.
picture the next time I have a discussion with anybody about we're not involved in a war. These are all the things that we have sent that are killing their enemy. They can literally just point to this and go, you are a co-conspirator. You and Germany and the UK. And they would just point to this picture and go, how can you deny that? And they would be right. In an international court of law, we could lose that. This is almost like once upon a time, China got sued by BMW for copyright infringement for stealing the design of the BMW X5 SUV. BMW lost. They lost their own case against property theft against China. Like, that same court would look at this and go, yeah, you fuckers are guilty. They would give it to Russia. Anyway, let's move on. We're almost done, folks. I promise. We're getting there. I think there's like a fifth of this left. I promise. All right. So 12:10 p.m. I don't have lunch till 2 o'clock, so I'm still grumpy. 8:10 p.m. Ukrainian local time. European Union Commissioner Maros Sefcovic said Friday that he wants Ukraine to become an EU member as soon as possible. Now remember, they're asking to be fast-tracked, so what you're hearing here is verbal confirmations and endorsements to such. It is time for signaling. Yeah, it is time for signaling that the Ukrainian people is one of the European peoples, and we want them in as soon as possible. He said that I think what is the most important right now is to help Ukraine in the fight. See, it's a lot of words. It's not very many actions, right? So the question is, what good will it do? Hey, you're in the EU. Great. Now you're gonna send an air. Now you're gonna do a no-fly zone. Oh no! You're in the EU though. Uh huh. Are you gonna send some, like, I don't know, medics and troops to help us because we're getting killed here? No. We can't do that. But welcome to the EU. But I need your help. Oh, here's some thoughts and prayers, and here's a couple of helmets. Good luck. That's kind of what that's sort of what's happening right now. Anyway, onward.
Onward.
This was a one-line update, probably because it was the only line that was allowed to leak out before Russia banned it. So, 9/11, coincidentally, Moscow time, 9/11, Russian state media has reported that Facebook has officially been blocked nationwide in Russia. Yay! I'm changing my home origin to Russia so that Mark Zuckerberg bans Facebook to me too. Anyway, I'm kidding. Let's see. That was 9/11. Okay, so 2:11 p.m. Central Standard Time. So this is where I finally get to have lunch, and I got to read this story. It's 12 p.m. Pacific Time. See, I'm taking you in the wrong direction again. Meta President of Global Affairs. Meta is the name that has Facebook was getting their shit pushed in so badly by the media that they decided they were going to change names. So now they're called Meta. So anyway, Meta President of Global Affairs Nick Clegg said that the company will do everything we can to restore the company's service in Russia after the government announced that Facebook will be blocked in the country. Soon, millions of ordinary Russians will find themselves cut off from reliable information. Okay. Deprived from their everyday ways of connecting with family and friends, and silenced from speaking out. Oh my god, it's almost as if they're getting banned because they're 2A advocates. We will continue to do everything we can to restore our services so they can remain available to people to safely and securely express themselves and organize for action. Let me get this straight. I post something about guns on Facebook, I'm banned. They get banned because they're saying they need guns to protect themselves from the Russian police, and the Russian police ban them, and Facebook's like, no, 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 no. We're going to get your service back to you so you can post about your guns that you're going to use against the cops that are oppressing you in Moscow. Right. Okay.
Well, you know how liberals are, double standards.
Yes. And Patrick brought up a really good point, actually. Afghans showed the world how effective man-pads were in the 1980s. You're correct. A lot of times they were hiding in, like, canyons and crevices, and, like, Russian planes had to get real low, so they made the man-pads really effective. I think you even got to see bits of that, even in the movie The Beast of War. Like, when the helicopters and stuff came. They had to get down real low. So, yeah, you're right. Certain environments really play to the strengths of man portables. Absolutely. Ukraine is, man, it's kind of hard. That's kind of a gray area though, because Ukraine's got some mountains, it's got some valleys, yes, but it's got a lot of open space too. So it's like, man, if they had more canyons and stuff, yeah, that Russian Air Force wouldn't be nearly as effective as it is. Anyway, let's move on. Where am I at? Oh, by the way, the Meta announcement thing about we can do everything about restoring your oh, are you? Well, okay, since you're there, I want you to try to jump in the channel yourself because I gave you the permissions. You should be able to just pop right on in. I gave you the access to do that now because I didn't know any other way to fix it. So like
I don't know if I can jump. Can I jump in there from? No, I don't have the permissions, do I?
Yeah, you do.
Do
If you have a purple name on the server, you should be able to see this room and get in and out of it.
All right, let me try that.
All right. If you can't, just, text. Okay, so I guess I'll just sit and wait. And then if it doesn't work... Huh?
Or not.
Oh, did you wake up?
Oh, I've been awake for about 40 minutes now.
Okay. I guess he can't get in?
I took Benadryl,
Yeah, I guess he can't get in.
so that shit knocked me out.
Huh. Oh, yeah, it's going to do that. All right, here, let me pull him in. Didn't work?
No, when I go out to the war room, this room disappears.
Huh. Okay. Here, let me see if I can grab you. All right. You're in. Can you unmute? Ah, he can.
Thing actually work?
Yes. Okay, so at least I can get it to where you can get in and unmute yourself now. That's cool. Sorry, I don't know why it took me so long to figure it out.
All you're doing is making GunTube Chamber look better than what it is.
Oh, whatever. It's a permissions thing. I probably forgot how to set it up properly. That's all. Anyway, so you're here, even though we're almost done, but it's cool. At least you know it works now.
Okay, look.
Go ahead.
If you provide weapons
Mm-hmm.
and training
Mm-hmm.
in peacetime or wartime to another country,
Mm-hmm.
morally you might be involved.
Okay.
But by the rules of war, okay, you're not. Every nation throughout history has armed or trained or done some other support either during times of conflict or during peacetime, in between, with other nations. Okay?
Hmm.
You can say morally we're involved, but legally we're not. Germany isn't, France isn't, Poland isn't, they're not.
Okay.
The instant any country involves combat troops, to include a no-fly zone
Hmm.
or strafing this ridiculous column, okay? Now we're involved. Now you might go, we already were. You're talking about morality. Morality isn't, it's just kind of like that Hague Convention, Geneva Convention, all that other garbage, right?
Okay. Yeah, I can
It's
see
like
that.
one of those rules. It's like one of those rules. It's like saying that an aircraft carrier at sea is not sovereign U.S. soil. Oh, yes, it is. No, it isn't. It's a ship. It's not a piece. It. So it's the same kind of logic. If you can follow where I'm going,
It's a
this is nothing
representative of the
new.
military of your country, so
Well, yeah, but I'm saying how somebody can go, no, it's a ship. It's not actual soil. Yeah, it's
right.
sovereign American soil, even though it's a ship.
Sure.
Okay. And in the same sense, if we send them weapons, ammo, anything like that, that is not us being involved in a by the rules of war sense. It's just not. If you give your friend a gun because they have been threatened and they fear for their life, and in your state it's legal,
Hmm.
and then somebody actually does kick in their door in the middle of the night and they use it, are you responsible? No.
No, because that was a self-defense situation.
Right. And that's exactly what this is. Even though the Soviets will say, or sorry, not Soviets, the Russians will say that, oh no, we're the good guys, right?
Yeah.
Everybody always thinks they're the good guys. And Victor writes the history.
Sure.
So when these countries are committing money, food, medical, they're helping refugees that are crossing the border, and they're providing weapons,
Yeah.
they are not getting involved. And it's cheaper to do that than it is to get involved. Also, we just got done with Afghanistan. We got our ass handed to us there. Okay,
Mhm.
we did. That exit strategy was not an exit strategy. Americans don't want to go to war. They don't. They do not. And especially with our economy and COVID and everything else, Putin knows all this. He knows everybody's distracted. And
He's taking advantage
Trump
of it.
isn't. Yes, Trump is not in office anymore. Now, I think Trump did a lousy job of handling the Iranians while he was in office. I'm
Yeah.
very disappointed in the way he did that.
Yep.
But do you think Trump would be standing by right now? Probably not.
Oh
And
no.
Putin knows that. Putin knows that that feeble old man that craps in his diaper is in office. All of the stars have aligned for Putin to do this. Plus, he had to make a move. All right?
Hmm.
Ukraine is moving towards being in NATO. Ukraine is moving towards being in the EU. Here's the
Mhm.
deal with Ukraine. Ukraine, to everybody in the world, is just some other Russians. But to the Ukrainians,
Yes.
they're not Russians. They're Ukrainians.
Yep.
Ukraine doesn't have a national identity. They're just an old Soviet state. Okay? They're a second world country, but the Ukrainians want what we have. They want the Western prosperity. They want the Western
Yes.
freedom. They want the Western way of life. And the old Soviet regime, that's still in power over in Russia, doesn't want to lose another satellite state. They don't want to lose a buffer zone. They don't want somebody that close to them being in NATO and all this other stuff. And they don't really look at the Ukrainians like proper Russians, right? Imperial Russians or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
So they've got their reasons for wanting to do this. I'm not saying they're right, but they've got their reasons. And the timing is perfect. If Biden says we're going to go in there, even if Putin goes, I won't use nukes no matter what happens.
Right.
Okay, and everybody believed him. Biden still isn't going to go in there because he knows he's going to screw himself. America will turn on him. We don't want to go into another war. We went into Iraq. We went into Afghanistan. We don't want any more of this. And Putin knows that. Plus, Putin has something Ukraine doesn't have. He's got all that oil. Ukraine doesn't have anything. You might say they got lithium, but it's not like a well-known thing. Certain countries are known for certain things, or certain regions are known. Why do you think we invested so much in the damn Persian Gulf? Because all the damn oil, right?
Right. Right.
It's just, right? Okay. The Ukraine isn't like helping us fight the war on terror or anything else like that. The Russians haven't been, at least not publicly, it's not that they've been supporting terrorists or trying to do things against America. You can say the Russian, the cyber warfare or whatever, but that's just, it's not mainstream, like, blowing up a couple buildings in New York City, right?
Right.
So because of that, we can't even use that pick or that wedge to get in there and get support. It's all about getting support. FDR had to wait for the Japanese to bomb Pearl Harbor to get America, who was up to that point saying we need to stay out of it, we need to be isolationists. The isolationist movement was big in America.
It was
and
even
then
bigger in World War One.
on December 8th, it was non-existent.
Yep.
So until Russia, either on purpose or by mistake, attacks a NATO force, like if one of their missiles goes off course and hits our aircraft carrier sitting in the Black Sea, or they accidentally or purpose, fly over Poland and drop some bombs,
Yeah.
nobody's going to get involved. They're not. But this is good for Ukraine if nobody gets involved other than sending them weapons across the border. And I'll tell you why. How is the world ever going to take the Ukraine seriously? How is the world going to look at Ukraine as its own country? How is the world going to stop looking at them as just some other Russians if they don't fight for what they believe in? If they don't fight for their land, if they don't fight for their beliefs, if they don't fight for their traditions, if they don't fight for their national identity, the world will never look at them as anything other than just some half-assed Russians. They're not Russians. They're Ukrainians. They're their own people, and they want a better life than any life that they could have had under the old communist regime. The Russians that are there, some of them have lived enough in the half-assed capitalism they've had over there that they know what's going on and they don't like it. And the other Russians are kind of conflicted. They didn't know what to do when they were given freedom and capitalism and stuff, and they don't like it. In the same way, the people didn't like Saddam. But then after Saddam got ousted, they didn't have power in Iraq for 2 years, and they're going, it was better under Saddam.
Yeah, they
So
had a
you've
power
got-
vacuum.
Yeah, well, and you've got the same thing in Russia. You've got the old guard and the new guard, and the new guard isn't as strong as the old guard right now. And it's kind of gone back and forth. Look at, what is that, Perestroika, right? But then it's kind of gone back and forth. So right now, the Russians have their old ways, and Ukraine needs to do this by themselves, and I believe they can. Now, I understand what you're saying about if they take out their leader, it ain't going to be so good, but he could become a martyr, and these people might even fight harder
Of course
for
they
him.
will.
But I think he's good for the country. I think it's good what he's doing. I hope he doesn't get taken out. But yeah, somebody could be bought so freaking easy. It's way too easy. They need to keep moving this guy around and everything else. But here's the thing. Whether he lives or whether he dies, these people are some hard-ass people. And with the exception of these separatists that were on the border, these people are on the border. If Russia really wanted to be all good, they could have said, we'll give you free citizenship, just walk across the border. Nope, they wanted the land, and they wanted to use that as a pick. And what happened when Russia went into Crimea? Nobody did shit. Not even Ukraine. Nobody did shit. And that told the Russians, hey, we
This
can
is
do this
ripe for
again
the
one day.
taking.
Right. Everything was, it just all the chess pieces were in perfect order for Putin. But Ukraine needs to do this on their own. And the last thing is, the only way Putin is probably going to use nukes, either limited or just all out, is if he feels like he's a cornered dog and they're going to hang him in the street like they did Mussolini. And even then, his generals might override him or anything. There was a time where Russia almost started World War III over a scientific rocket being launched up in like Norway or something, right? And they almost, they armed the weapons, they were ready to go, and then it's like, wait a minute, something ain't right. But they could have just said, screw it, and just hit the button, and we all wouldn't be here today. So it is possible for somebody to go, hey, wait a minute, and hold this thing up. So Putin doesn't have 110% control over the nuclear weapons, but he does have the nukes, and Ukraine doesn't. And I get why Ukraine gave them up, because they said, we're going to do this to extend the olive branch so that later on down the road, we're going to get into NATO and we're going to, they're going to look at us different. We're not part of the evil empire anymore. We're the good guys like you, right? But here's the other thing that nobody's taken into account. Maybe they gave them up because they couldn't keep them. It costs a lot of money to maintain and secure nuclear weapons. And Ukraine is a second world nation. They don't have the finances to maintain and protect their nuclear arsenal. And if Ukraine was known as the country that sold nuclear weapons to North Korea, or Ukraine was the country where these nuclear devices that terrorists use all across the world came from, their name would be mud. Even if there was no promise that if they give these things up, they'll get something later, it would have behooved them to give them up anyhow, seriously. And I just don't think that people are looking at that. I think this is a win-win-win, and I think Ukraine is going to come out on top.
Maybe.
Well, realistically, Squib, technically, Russia is also a second world country, but because they have a large military force, they're still seen as
Do they though?
somewhat of a superpower.
Do they though?
Okay, this is what Russia has that other nations, maybe in the same financial situation or whatever you want to call it, they've got a way to accurately deliver enough thermonuclear weapons to destroy the planet.
Right.
Some of these
No,
other
I
countries
get
might
that.
have nuclear
I
weapons,
get
but they
that.
don't have an accurate delivery system. Okay? Some of these other countries might be working on it, but even after they get the bomb, they have the one bomb, they still don't have a way to put it in the hot dog stand in the middle of the Pentagon. Okay? Russia can do that. So as long as Russia can do that, they have that card.
I don't
At the
know,
same-
man. The
at the
thing
same
is,
term,
you
we
said
have
that they
card
can't.
too.
You said that Ukraine can't maintain a nuclear arsenal, and there's some truth to that. But the fact of the matter is they have maintained the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. That's a
And
lot.
that could
That's
be
a lot
that
of
could be
material to
using
deal with too. And they
that could
have
be
more
using a
than
lot
one.
of their resources. Okay, maintaining a nuclear power plant and protecting and maintaining nuclear weapons are two different things. They might seem like the same, but they're two different. Have you ever been to a nuclear missile silo?
No,
They
because
don't
they
let
won't
you
let you
visit
through the
those.
gate.
Well, you could just cut the gate with a bolt cutters and go in, but
Yeah,
you're on
and then
camera
get
though.
shot.
You're on
And
the
Yeah,
then get
whole.
I
You're
shot.
like
on
to be
camera
on
the
this
whole time.
side
The
of the
react
grass.
team. The react team is rolling.
Yeah,
Okay, you're never going to get through that concrete.
exactly. Like
No.
I
Patch.
like.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna
You're
stay
not
on
gonna.
this side of the
Yeah,
grass.
yeah. There's signs. There's signs on the fence that say you can't fly drones over top of it, and
Yes.
there's yes.
You know, the
Okay.
other thing though is you were saying that the example of the Ukraine for me is sort of like the War of Texas Independence, if you think about it. Um, like the Alamo, for instance. Okay, you've got Ukraine, which is a small nation, surrounded and being messed with by a much larger belligerent nation. So this is like the guys at the Alamo staring at Santa Anna's massive army, right? And they asked for help, and they got it. Some volunteers from other states came, but the United States, a fledgling nation, wouldn't help, and everyone died, right?
Yeah, Houston got there too late.
Right. So the fact of the matter is like the parallels can be made. You can pick any cliche or any battle you want, but Ukraine is the Alamo. For the free world, I guess is a good way, metaphorically speaking. They are the Alamo for the West right now, and Putin is Santa Anna. And right now, they're begging for help. And the help that they want isn't on the ground. They just want the skies clear so their ground forces can do what they do
Fly
already.
one plane over sovereign Ukrainian airspace, you have just entered the conflict. It is
Right, and
not the
I
same as
know what
sending
you're
them
saying.
bombs. Yes.
You're saying that the morality of offering help, like I get it now. It makes sense to me, right? Like the math always checked out to me too. But you have to also think about the person that you're up against, right? Today, Putin went on live state public TV and he said that the reason he is attacking civilian targets is justified because when the civilians armed themselves to defend themselves and their homeland, they became militants, which means
That's correct.
everything
That is absolutely correct.
that means everything about them is forfeit,
Yep, that's correct. That's actually one of the rules of war. Yep.
even when you're defending your own
Yep.
home.
Yep.
Okay, so there's some justification behind him blowing
Okay,
up residential buildings then.
When I was in Somalia, I could put one right between the eyes of a 10-year-old if he pointed an M16 at me.
Sure.
Okay? Enemy combatant. Well, you just killed a kid. He doesn't know
Yes.
any better. He armed himself.
Yes.
It's like, you just shot an unarmed man. Well, he should have armed himself.
Yeah, I know I know the saying, but the thing is these people arm themselves because they're being invaded. Now, if
It doesn't
they,
matter. It doesn't matter.
I-
It doesn't matter. If
I
you're
think-
if you're
I
if
think-
you
I think I
don't
get
want to
what you're
get
saying.
if you don't want to put a target on yourself, flee
I-
or surrender. Seriously.
I think what Squib is saying is, even if you're a civilian, it doesn't matter whether you're a civilian or a soldier. If you take up arms, you are seen by the enemy as a military combatant.
sure.
You are a soldier if you are in a uniform. If
If
you are
you're-
not in a uniform, you're an enemy combatant. Either way, you're fair game.
Right,
Yeah.
but what's happening is these missiles aren't
determining friend or foe when they hit the building. Putin doesn't see who's in the buildings. He's making a gross assumption that because the citizenry of the country is defending itself, the entire country is the enemy combatant, regardless of who is inside of it.
And whether
That's
they
the
have arms or
problem.
not.
If he can't prove that there's people in there armed, but he can't prove that they're not armed either. And he's just like, I'm not taking the risk. I'm blowing up everything. And get this, this is a guy who doesn't even have a cell phone. He doesn't have an internet connection. He's getting fed whatever his two remaining yes men generals are telling him to keep their necks out of the news. So his information is always skewed anyway. And he
Yeah,
went
but
on
none of
public
that
TV
matters. None of
today
that matters.
to brainwash his own Russian children in schools today, to convince them that his war is just and it's still not a war. Like, this is the kind of, like, I don't want to call him an idiot. This is the kind of guy that the world is having to deal with. He's not. I don't buy this whole thing that he's unhinged. I really don't. I don't think that's true at all. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. This is my debate about this is his justification for war. That's what's stupid. He's just trying to legacy build before he keels over.
You're arguing the morality and you're arguing the justification when none of that matters. He's going to do it anyway.
Sure.
And you're trying to use that as a wedge, as a pick to get other nations in there and things like, and that's not a good idea. And I can tell you this, these countries in Europe have militaries with limited deployment capability. They could
Yes.
send somebody to other sides of the, as part of a coalition, but
Sure.
overall they can't deploy. Now you can go, well, they don't really need to deploy. Russia is like driving across the street. And you're right. This would be the easiest deployment for any of them.
Yes.
But their militaries are small. Their militaries are only designed to defend their country. They're not really meant to defend interests abroad and things. America is the only superpower left, okay? America can go anywhere in the world and kick anybody's ass. Nobody else can say that. Not even Russia can say that. People say China can. China can't. China can't even invade America, okay? They can't, all right? So
that's why they're
these
asking
countries,
for NATO to help, not an individual country to
but-
help them.
But regardless, none of these countries really have a military that is designed to go in and fight a big war. And even though there's a European Union, the European Union looks good on paper. Otherwise, it doesn't work. These countries are not good about getting together and doing stuff. The UN screws everything up. They do. I've got a couple of UN medals. I can tell you, it's like the Keystone Cops. They're idiots. Okay.
So they're pointless
So-
then. They have they have no purpose.
They really don't. They're a feel-good measure,
It's
and
a PR,
they can't.
yeah, it's a PR thing.
Yeah. Yes, they can't organize. They can't organize a military type thing or a what the hell do they call it? Peacekeeping force. Any of that. All right. But the whole point is these nations aren't willing to commit their military. They're not willing to have their young kids come home in body bags over this.
No, they want to use
They're
ours.
not. And they're not going to work together unless they absolutely have no other choice. Even though they're all in Europe and even though they're all in the EU and they use the euro and all this other bullshit, they don't even trust each other. Okay, they've got centuries and centuries of wars between each other. There's still bad blood and all this other bullshit. So the European countries aren't going to commit ground troops unless Russia involves them. If Russia, like I said, fires a missile over somebody's border, then it's on, right?
Mm-hmm.
America's not going to go in there because Biden is too weak and Americans don't. Right now, we got too much going on. No, and once again, there's just some damn Russians over there. Who cares? It's over there. All right. But if Ukraine supplied us with 30% of our oil and not Russia, then we might care. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. 'Cause
After
there's a
this is all
monetary gain
over,
to be had.
well, after all of this is over, it's up to Ukraine to go, all right, we've proven that we're tough enough to fight. We've proven that we won our own identity and we have our own identity. Now we're going to rebuild our nation and nobody will forget the name Ukraine. Nobody will forget us or forget this country. And next time some shit goes down, you boys better be in with us. And we probably will be. But Ukraine has to do this on their own. They have to put, Russia in their place. And I think they're going to come out on top no matter what. I'm not worried about some convoy or any of this other crap because it's been sitting there for 9 days or whatever. Ukraine isn't the Alamo. Kyiv is the Alamo. And I'm glad that you said last week that they pronounce it Kyiv.
Mm-hmm.
Russians pronounce it Kiev. You
Yes.
just quantified the fact that Ukraine wants its own identity. Don't ever call me a Russian again.
Right. Actually, even their languages are ever so slightly different. It's the same Cyrillics, but they're actually pronounced or enunciated differently too. So what you would try to translate into Russian doesn't come out clean in Ukraine. I had to actually like correct a few of those things today.
It's like trying to differentiate Spanish between Italian.
And long term, this will put Russia in its place. Long term, this could create a problem in Russia where they've got their own internal issues, and you never know. They could have another civil war, they could have a revolution, they could have all this civil unrest worse than what we had here, and maybe somebody finally deposes Putin. Maybe
Well,
they get their act together.
all right.
But
So
I guarantee you this: Russia will be afraid of Ukraine for quite a while after this is over.
there are some that are out there saying that if what we observe is a disconnected, disoriented, disorganized, and useless Russian military, right? Their air force seems pretty damn good, but their ground forces are garbage. If that is the case, there are some in the military minds that are saying maybe this is the time we can finally put down Russia once and for all and just say you will never be a military superpower with an idiot like that in charge because
Okay.
he's going backwards. And see the thing is a lot of his things that he's trying to justify that you said that makes sense, right? If he had to face a military tribunal, he would be found guilty anyway, right? Because they're going to say that you're on the wrong side of this whether your justification is correct. You're still on the wrong side of this. You're still guilty. You'll still hang. And it's like, wait a minute. If we need an excuse to get involved and you've got people like Pompeo saying, "Hey, we can get involved covertly," then it's just a matter of saying, "Hey, look, this missile hit a building in Poland today. It was the Russians." They don't have to prove it.
Okay, look, you say that he'll face a military tribunal and all this other. No, it won't
If he's
happen.
captured. Only if
It
he's
won't.
captured.
It won't happen, and I'll tell you why. You're talking about a situation where we voluntarily put ourselves into this.
Okay.
We weren't pulled into this because the Russians attacked us
Right.
or attacked our allies. We took the offense. Congratulations, you just killed everybody on the planet. Good job, asshole.
Oh, you mean it's like the whole mutually assured destruction thing?
If you want to see that actually get used, then insert yourself into the war
Yeah.
without provocation. And you might go, well, they're attacking Ukraine. That's provocation. No. When they sink a carrier in the Black Sea, or they nuke Warsaw or Berlin or Paris or something like that, then it's provocation. Well, not even nuke, but they could, or
So-
just they attack, they march into Poland or they something like that.
Yeah.
At that point, now we have justifications for saying, all right, we're in, boots on the ground, we're in. All right, you idiots in Europe, get your stuff together and follow us. And all that. But if we just go, nope, we're going to go in there, we're going to put down this dog once and for all, they're going to launch their arsenal, and the world just ended. Goodbye. Nice knowing you.
That's an assumption that the world's going to end, though. That's like the assumption that the Russians are still dangerous. Everything is an assumption until it's done, right? Everything is a theory until it's been proven or practiced.
I'm
And-
telling you that if you go in there and they haven't attacked you first,
Mm-hmm.
the odds that they are going to unleash the arsenal are much higher than if they either by mistake or on purpose decide to drag somebody else into the conflict.
Yeah.
Also, let's just say we go in there, Putin says, hey, I'm not going to use the nukes. I'm not that crazy. And we go, okay, good. Now we're going in and it's a fight and other sides join. We're going to be committed to that, which we don't know. It could get big. Who knows, right?
Right.
And then China decides that they're going to take Taiwan, and we're too busy. Right now, America to fight on two fronts is very difficult for us. We've had that capability for a long time, but as time goes on, it's more and more difficult. This would be a great distraction for them. I'm not saying they will. I'm not in that conspiracy garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But if we went in, I don't know that we could fight on two fronts effectively.
Not like we
I
used
really
to.
don't. Not like we used to, because back in the 80s, I tell you what, we need Ronald Reagan so bad. If they could just resurrect his ass, the Russians would drop their guns and run like the Yankees did at Bull Run the first time. They would drop their guns and run for Moscow.
I think that's one of Putin's
yeah, but
biggest
if-
regrets.
If they brought Reagan back, we'd have to, we'd probably lose our machine guns all over again.
No, no,
You
no,
know
no.
what? You don't understand history. Every time you talk about that, you say that out of ignorance. You don't even understand what happened. You
Huh.
were in diapers back then. Look,
I
son,
know.
we almost got nuked in the 80s,
Mhm.
and the only man that kept us alive was Ronald fucking Reagan, the greatest president we ever had.
Ever? Or just our lifetime?
Well, just because pretty much all of our politicians are shitbags. So if I had to pick
Yeah.
the best shitbag, he's the best shitbag ever.
I don't know, man. I think one of Putin's biggest regrets, it's almost like Rocky 5, right? Was it Rocky 5 or is it 6? I think it was Rocky Balboa, so it was Rocky 6, right? It was that what if scenario, and he fought a guy who was so much younger than he was. I think if Putin had the opportunity, he would have taken the challenge of facing Reagan if he was in power back then. That's the kind of guy he is.
Okay. Kennedy stood up to Khrushchev. Reagan
Yes.
stood up to Brezhnev, Andropov, and
Gorbachev even.
Gorbachev. Yeah, he stood up to. Okay, Kennedy and Reagan were the only two that had the balls to stand up against the Russians. Now, in Khrushchev's defense, we thought Russia had a lot more weapons than they did at the time. Khrushchev knew he didn't have the weapons to defeat us,
Yes.
but we didn't know that. And Kennedy still said, "All right, I'm calling your bluff." All right, and the world would be a different place today because I think we would have survived that nuclear war.
Mhm.
If there had been a nuclear war in, was it 62? Right?
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah, I think the world would have survived. It would be a whole different place today. But in the 1980s, there wouldn't have been nothing left. There's less weapons now than in the 80s, and it still doesn't matter. There's still enough weapons. Nothing would be left.
See, there's
And
an
I just
assumption that the Russians can't afford the weapons they have, and the ones that they did have are out of service. So we don't even have an accurate estimation of their inventory anymore. Like a lot of it's just Cold War garbage. It's like derelict. It's sitting in that
so
convoy right now, broken.
you literally think they've got a bunch of silos and submarines that can't fire nuclear weapons.
Oh no. I'm just saying, like, we don't have an accurate inventory assessment. They have
All right,
weapons.
let's say they launched 10 nuclear missiles with one warhead each. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So they take out what? Washington, D.C., New York City, London, Paris, Berlin. Who else? What else? Let's see. L.A., Tokyo, maybe what?
Beijing.
Toronto. I don't know about Beijing. Beijing's their friend.
Are they
Maybe
really,
Sydney
though?
or. Yeah, but I mean, okay, so they take out 10 major UN or NATO freaking
Population
countries. They
centers.
take out They take out 10 major, and that fallout spreads and all the.
Mhm.
You're telling me that we wouldn't unleash the sleeping giant? We wouldn't say, "Turn the keys, boys."
Oh no.
And at that
yeah.
point, yeah. When the cloud makes it over here a week later, we're all dead.
Yeah, every doomsday movie ever made is that. Like, we got launch detections, we have to launch ours too. It's every movie's been like that. Every scenario's played
Well,
out like that.
the other thing is there is a play in the playbook that says launch first because you might be able to take out more of their stuff. You're going to do more damage to them. It use it or lose it kind of.
Yeah.
Right. And because we do target their weapon systems that aren't mobile, and they target ours as well. And there's a bunch of cornfields in Nebraska that are going to get vaporized. Okay. But if Putin decides to use that
400
playbook
of
and
them.
go, I've got to use it or I'm going to lose it, if he thinks. Now, once again, it's a rare thing, but there's certain things that will trigger that more. Okay. There's certain actions I think that would put us closer to him going, push the button, turn the key or whatever, right? And other things just wouldn't.
See, but that's the problem. The world is always at the mercy of the madman then.
Yeah, that's why we should always have nuclear weapons, duh.
So we're always held hostage.
Yeah,
Like-
but we got them by the balls too. It's like
Yeah,
I got a gun to
yeah.
your forehead and you got a gun to my forehead, and we're looking each other in the eye and go, do it. I double dog dare
The
you.
classic
And-
Mexican
yeah.
standoff.
Yeah, yes. And you can't, once you've opened Pandora's box, okay, in 1945, we made a decision for the rest of the world. Now, there were other countries that were on their way to having it, and if we hadn't made that decision by 1955, somebody else would have, okay? We made a decision, and we have to live with this forever. these are not going to go away. If anything, they're going to replace them with like antimatter weapons or something like that. But there will always be a way to destroy the planet in 35 minutes.
So you're
Okay.
saying Lindsey Graham is actually probably the closest to right in this whole situation, then, even though he's taking a lot of flack for it.
Golden Graham, what did he say?
That someone in Russia should take him out. I guess what he's basically saying is either you're going to assassinate him, or you're gonna have a coup strong enough to overthrow him.
Yes, I think that is a potential, and Putin needs to look at that as well.
The hardest
and
part
right
about
now,
that is his entire country is disarmed.
but
The
see,
populace, that is.
But there have been protests and people getting arrested
Yeah,
and
and do
things
you know
like
where
that, right?
nobody knows where any of those 8,300 people have gone? Nobody even had the balls to follow the truck because Oman would just get out and light up the car following them.
Well, duh, it's Russia.
So
But what
where
I'm
are they?
saying though is, I don't. Where have any of the people gone to the Gulag, Siberia, whatever?
Yeah.
But the whole thing is, at a certain point, Putin is going to have to take that threat seriously. But what point is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. But right now, I don't think he takes it seriously.
I think he just keeps getting away with it because he knows nobody's going to stop him. Because we're at the mercy of the madman. That's the problem. These people are emboldened because they know that nobody's got the stomach to fight him. And a lot of it, I still believe this. I still think that the world is scared of Russia because they're still thinking that Russia is the 1960s Cold War monster that it used to be. And I just don't think that's the case anymore.
No, they got oil and nukes. That's why they're
Those
afraid
are the
of Russia.
two things that they need to keep you scared. I know that's what you're saying. It's just, God, so does
Okay,
the rest of us.
I don't like bullies, Sean. Okay,
Right.
I don't. But I'm also not going to take on 10 bullies with guns where I'm all by myself and no weapons, right?
That's what he's doing, though.
Okay, and that's just it. You don't get into a fight that you don't think you can win. You don't take a knife to a gunfight, right? And stuff like that.
So he thinks he can win.
He thinks he can win, but I don't think he'll take Ukraine. I don't think he will.
I don't think he'll take it in the classical sense. I mean, what was it? Was it Chechnya before? Or was it... I think it was Chechnya, right? He went in, and he overran the country in no time flat, but then the guerrilla warfare, street to street, was like 10 years, and he just left. He was like, fuck this is bullshit.
And eventually they ran it. They fell in line anyway.
They fell in line anyway, yeah. He got a puppet government in there, and he got what he wanted in the end anyway.
And now there's a long-term potential. This could not end well for Russia, but then somehow or another they weasel their way in. But by then Putin is, as old as Biden, and he's
That's
crapping
true
in his
too.
pants.
That's very true too. But the fact of the matter is you want Ukraine to make its own identity, and I get that. Forge your own path, get your own thing, so the world doesn't say you're just Diet Russia. That makes perfect sense to me. By the time this is over, though, if they don't feel like they've gotten the help that they had begged for, and they lose like a third of their population in the process, they're not going to want to join us after that. They're going to be like, "Fuck both of y'all." And that's
No, they need us.
They
They
will
need us
be the
too
buffer.
much. They need us too much. But what you're saying has happened historically.
Yeah, and they
Look
will
at
end up being
Vietnam.
the buffer.
Look at Vietnam. Vietnam asked us for help in World War II. Help us with the Japanese, and we said no.
Yeah.
We were too busy with the island hopping. And then later, after the war, what did they do? They jumped in with the commies, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's other situations like that where we've backed the wrong guy, or we haven't supported the right guy, or we haven't gone far enough, or stayed long enough, or stayed out, or done. This could end up being that sort of thing. But once again, Ukraine they're not a terrorist or terrorist country. They're not an Islamic country.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a wealthy country. They may not like us, but at some point, they're going to have to understand that they're going to need us if they want to be a Western nation, a modern, prosperous, first world Western nation, whether they like us or not. I mean, I'm sure there's still plenty of people in countries that are our allies that don't like us.
There's a saying that if you can take something, you take it, right? And it's like anytime you can take a nation away from the old Soviet bloc and turn it into a Western civilization, by all means you take it, right? If we could have had if we could take North Korea, if North Korea said, look,
whatever we've been doing since the 1950s is bullshit, and we're going to unify with the Southern Peninsula, and we want to drink that Kool-Aid and fuck China, we would absolutely take them with open arms, like without a doubt, because anything you can take away from your enemy, you're gonna take it. You want it, you'll take it, because it's just another thumb in Putin's eye, isn't it? Every Soviet satellite state that left, he took as a personal insult.
Yep.
And that's why he's desperate to get it back before he dies, to say that in his legacy, he made Soviet Union great again.
Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, let's just say he does that. This is his master plan. He wants all the pieces on a Monopoly board.
Yes.
I have one word that will handle all of it.
Navalny?
Poland.
Yeah.
By itself, with
Spot
no
on.
outside help, Poland could crush Russia.
You're not the first person to tell me that, and I absolutely believe that. Those people have an incredible amount of fight in them. But
Two countries you don't want to fuck with, Israel and Poland.
yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I'm 100% with you on that. Like you said, it would take one stray missile, and that would be the end of it.
And that's what people should be more worried about, because one artillery round goes over the border and hits a shack with 2 guards in it, like in Stripes, right? Okay, and the Polish are not too happy about. I know that was Czechoslovakia. It's Czechoslovakia. It's not Moscow. We zip in, we get them, we zip out. It's Czechoslovakia. No, but they hit one guard shack on the border by mistake. Poland will take that serious, and they will go all the way to Moscow.
Yeah, but even
They
if
will
it wasn't
take-
the
they will
Russians that
take-
did it, why can't they just
they
say
will-
it happened?
They will
invoke
take a-
Article 5.
Well, I mean, look at what happened in World War II. Germany had those false radio reports on the border. They had a false radio station on the border, and they were trying to make it sound like Poland was invading Germany. Hence,
Yeah.
Germany had the right to start the war. And it was a
Right.
total lie. It was an absolute total lie.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, Poland could say, well, we'll just take one out of the Nazis' playbook. But
exactly.
the reality is Poland won't just go into Ukraine and kick the Russians out. They'll cross the border. They'll go into Russia. They'll find a hammer and sickle somewhere, and they'll shove it so far up Putin's ass, it'll come out through his eye sockets. They will not.
It
And
won't
other
stop
nations
at
will be like,
Ukraine.
back off, and Poland will be like, oh, no, it's on, dude. It's on.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the opposite of what Putin's doing. It's like everyone says Putin won't stop at Ukraine. Well, yeah, if you piss off the Poles, it won't stop at Ukraine either, because they're gonna, as they push through, it'll get Ukraine what they need, which is the Russians out. But the war won't be over for the Poles, obviously.
Okay, but look at it like this. Let's say you're Poland and you really don't want to get into a war, or you're Germany or Lithuania or Romania or any of these other border, Prussia, whatever's over there, right?
Yeah.
The maps change so many times, I don't know all this, your Luxembourg, whatever. Anyhow, you're better off arming the Ukraines and sending them food and medical aid and all this other stuff, helping their women and children come across and giving them shelters to stay in until this is over and all this other stuff, because the Ukrainians are wearing down the Russians. They're wearing them down.
They are.
So even if the Russians do take Ukraine and they decide to march into the next country, they're gonna be so beat up. It's gonna be pathetic.
But it's not gonna be like island hopping for them. If they took Ukraine, what they would do is they would administer the area and get their infrastructure back up so they can start tooling up there, and then
That
they'll
would
go to
take
the
too
next
long.
one.
That would take too long.
On whose time scale, though?
Okay, even if they got guns to people's head, all right, and you're going to go to the gulag if you don't do this. Sure, they're going to get some, but they're not going to get that place up and running and all the in record time to get into the next country and then rebuild it and get it's
Not
just,
all of it, just what
no.
they need.
Putin
to
will
keep
be
going.
long dead. Putin will be long dead. He's going to die of butthole cancer or something.
You see, this is why I like it when Squib jumps in.
All right, I got a video I'm going to try to play because I'm almost out of stories anyway. Let me see if I can find it. I'm going to see if there's anything worth keeping in here, because I mean, we can do this for eternity. All
I
right,
know one thing.
what's that?
Putin better not kill Zelensky. Because then he turns him into a fucking martyr.
You know,
And the Ukrainians will turn it into Chechnya 2.0.
I don't think it stops at Zelensky, honestly. Like, You can turn Zelensky into a martyr, and that'll be a battle cry. Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad, remember Zelensky,
Mhm.
right? I think the exact same thing could be said if one of the Klitschkos were killed,
Oh yeah.
because one of them is the mayor of Kiev. Or if Alexander Usyk was killed. Now, not very many
Right.
people in this chat probably knows who he is, but anybody who knows anything about boxing knows that that guy's a phenom. And we're like, wow, and he's active now. And he dropped his career to go fight. Now, what does that sound like? Active people in their career stopping what they're doing to serve their country. You know, we used to do that
World
in
War
this
II U.S.
country.
soldiers.
No, we used to do that in this country. Like Clark
Well,
Gable and like Jimmy
yeah,
Stewart.
yeah, but it also puts him in position for an elected position in the future. I'm not saying that's why he's doing it, but
Yeah.
if he's smart, he'll, if he gets a hero status from this, he can use that. Now,
Well,
if he's a patriot, that's a good thing. They need people
yeah.
like that in power, right?
Four of
But
them are boxers. One's a welterweight boxer, one's a heavyweight boxer, and then two of them were former undefeated heavyweight champions for over 15 years. There's a professional tennis player who's out there. There's a professional comedian. There's a professional chef. Like, what they're doing is they're showing the world a kaleidoscope of professional people who stopped everything to defend their country. That is defining their identity right there. Those are fine examples of that.
It's solidifying the fact that they are not Russian.
It
That
is.
they are their own country.
It is. All right, let's get through the rest of the stories because I want to try to get this video out because I need help understanding what it means, okay? Because there was a proposal today and it came in a very nonchalant interview and it came from, he's now retired, but it's General Keith Clegg. Keith Kellogg, sorry. I'm reading the word Clegg on my screen. Keith Kellogg came up with this idea, and it was brilliant. And I thought, wait a minute, how does that work? So maybe we can figure that out. But I've got a couple of stories I got to get through before we get to that. All right, so I'm going to just zip through these pretty quickly so we can get to that part. 9 o'clock Brussels time, Secretary of State Antony Blinken downplayed the impact that energy sanctions on Russia would have, arguing any such sanctions would hurt America and its allies more than they would Moscow. The sanctions are designed to have maximum impact on Russia and Putin while minimizing harm to us and our partners. There's no strategic interest in reducing the global supply of energy. The immediate impact is to raise prices at the pump for Americans and to pad Russian profits with rising profits. Anyway, he's basically saying that no, I'm not doing shit about the energy problem, which is really annoying because I paid $4.05 a gallon yesterday. 10 o'clock Moscow time, p.m. It was I was eating lunch. It was 2 o'clock my time. The Russian government further blocked other social media access and shut down Twitter from within the country. So it was that, and then they cut off Facebook, and then yesterday they had shut down, I think it was 3 TV stations and 3 like national radio stations. So they were really cracking down because before this incursion kicked off, they had listed criteria of yes words and no words. And if you get caught with the no words, they're shutting you down. So essentially, they're controlling the narrative within their own country. Let's see. 4:13. So 2 hours had passed. 4:13. I'm getting ready to count down to picking up my new Anaconda, which is in my lap right now as I'm talking. Which is 12:13 a.m. Saturday Ukrainian time. So it's day 10 over there now. President Biden's administration is sending mixed messages about alleged Russian war crimes during the ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Asked Friday whether a reported strike on a Ukrainian nuclear power plant would constitute a war crime to the U.S. government, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that there is still an internal investigation underway. We have an internal review that's been ongoing prior to last night to collect evidence and data of the targeting of civilians. Right? Yeah. of the reported use of horrific weapons of war on the ground in the Ukraine. That's an ongoing process. We have not made conclusions. It's a legal review and a process that goes through the administration, the U.S. Embassy to Ukraine. Sorry, I'm getting tired. The U.S. Embassy to Ukraine, however, indicated Friday morning that the Russians had committed a war crime. So the White House says, well, let's wait and see. And then the embassy says, no, that's absolutely a war crime. And then the rest of the world is sort of laying back in shock because what had happened had never happened before, technically. You know, like a belligerent nation didn't ever attack a nuclear power plant before, which is why I was saying that I think that had taught the world that you can be a nuclear power without even having a nuclear weapon. You just go attack someone's nuclear power plant and blow it up, which is a very dangerous thing to start doing.
I don't know. All I got out of that was that Jen Psaki is an idiot.
She is an idiot. And what's really funny is nobody's taken her to task or asked her the question, what is that picture of Biden and you 20 years ago? And where did it go? And what happened on that day? And is that how you got the job you're doing today? Like when she first got that job, that picture was released. Very handsy Biden. Much younger, less East German librarian looking Jen Psaki. Anyway, let's keep going because we're almost there. Let's see. I got a picture here. I know it's on Cyrillic. I'll read it out for you. It's actually not that complicated. 12:13 a.m. Saturday Ukrainian time. So this was at the same time. Early morning counter-offensive. That's what it's basically saying there. Ukraine armed forces have launched a counter-offensive against Russian troops in the Kharkiv region. Ahead of the Kharkiv military administration, Oleg Sinagubov. So that's what that basically is. The bottom thing is his name, Oleg Sinagubov. Sorry. I am getting tired. Anyway, so yeah, a counterattack or counteroffensive is underway. What's really encouraging about this is midnight. This is the time that the Russian infantry is not very effective. But apparently the Ukrainian military is incredibly effective. So maybe some of the equipment we sent over was, I don't know, nods? Maybe? We'll see. I guess we'll get the results later, right? Okay, so now we're at the video thing. Let me see if I can get this to work. I'm going to pull it up here. And I'm going to try to play this on a screen share through the Discord so you guys in the panel can see it. As well as... Oh, wait, I don't know if that's going to work. Let's just try it and see what happens. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go to here and say OK. Right? OK. And I'm going to try to play this, and hopefully you guys will be able to hear it.
Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg is a former National Security Advisor to Vice President Mike Pence and the co-chairman of the America First Policy Institute Center for American Security. So all the talk, General, this afternoon has been this appeal that Zelensky has made to NATO to commit to a no-fly zone over Ukraine, which would basically use the
it's
color
actually
blue
quieter than you,
because
Sean,
NATO is
and I
known
can
as the
barely
Blue
hear
Force.
you most of
And
the
that
time.
would basically make all of this an area, I guess, north of Crimea, where Russian planes could not fly. Here's what Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, said about it. We are not part of this conflict, and we have a responsibility to ensure it does not escalate and spread beyond Ukraine. We understand the desperation, but we also believe that if we did that, a no-fly zone, we would end up with something that could lead to a full-fledged war in Europe involving much more countries and much more suffering. But, General, you say that there is a way to do it. How?
Well, I think there is. And look, I think we're walking into Act Two of a Greek tragedy. And that Act Two will start with the Russians going into the major built-up areas, primarily Kyiv, a city of 3 million. And you're going to see street-to-street fighting. You're going to see a lot of casualties out there, civilian casualties. And I think when you start seeing those visions of those people dying, the civilians, I think the world's going to say, you know, I'm tired of this. Enough. Stop. And I think what the United States could do is not get NATO involved, but they can go to the UN. And they could say under Articles 27 and 52, wait a second, there's a way to do this. Have a UN no-fly zone, not a NATO no-fly zone where Article 5 doesn't apply.
And who would enforce that?
Well, the UN, we would probably be involved in it under UN cover. But under both of those articles, all you need is 9 of the 15 votes of the UN Security Council to get it moving. And according to Article
couldn't
50,
Russia veto?
wow, that's where Article 52 comes in. Because Article 50 is very specific. Article 52 says if you're part of a conflicted party, you're part of it, you are supposed to, by UN rules, abstain.
Stand down.
So, and if we could get an interlocutor like Macron to pick up the phone and call Putin and call maybe President Xi and say, hey, look, we want you both to abstain. Look, Putin is not winning this fight. Putin is losing this fight. And he would look at ways to say, well, where's my off-ramp? And my off-ramp is, with all this economic problems I've got, there may be a way to do it. And if the United Nations comes into the world body and says this is going to be a UN no-fly zone, then we honor what Zelensky has wanted. We keep NATO out of the fight. Now, well, is this high risk? Of course it is. Is it a perfect plan? No, it's not. No plans are perfect. But there's a way to do it, and we should at least explore it.
That is an interesting formula. Let me come along to where we are now in terms of this invasion. And we go to the south because this is...
All right, so they go into tactics past that. But that was the part I wanted you all to see. Because what he had just done there was he gave... Basically, he gave the UN an avenue to implement the very thing that NATO can't. And by doing so, if he gets NATO involved in this, or sorry, if he gets the UN to do it, he didn't commit any of our own troops into it. He got the UN to do it, right? The UN has their own air force. He can get them involved. He can let them take
The
the
UN
lead.
doesn't have anything. The UN uses militaries from all of its members.
Right, but I mean, he
That
can
people
get
think
them
the
to
UN
commit
has
their own.
its that when
UN has no teeth.
that tank they painted white and put UN on, that was a French tank.
Yeah.
The patch that you're wearing your country's uniform, but you got the UN patch
Yeah,
on
you
there.
put an armband
stuff
on
like
or
that.
whatever. But the
Yes.
the thing is he found a way to get this implemented with less votes, right? And if it passes, then he can say, okay, look, now who's committing how many aircraft? And then we can answer that last. We can just be like, look, it's y'all's conflict on the other side of the country. You're going to be able to get it done there, or deployed much quicker than us. So y'all take the lead on this. We'll hang back. Like, that could get the ball rolling. And that's, I think, what he was implying was you can get it set up in such a way where the two belligerent nations that would have veto power are forced to abstain because it's a conflict of interest. They have to. They're not allowed to vote yay or nay on that. They have to abstain by UN charter. It's pretty clever.
You're not going to give up until you get another nation committed to this shit.
Probably. I don't know.
Bad idea,
Poland.
man. Bad chess
The
move.
only thing I like about this is somebody's thinking outside the box, though. Like, everyone's saying why they can't do it, and this guy's like, well, no, there's another way to do this. Because the only other alternatives are nefarious. So, we've heard it from Mike Pompeo. We've heard it from, like, pundits for days. They were like, well, look, we're not saying that our covert operations aren't capable. It's like, no, what you're saying is we'll just do it and then deny it. It's like, they're not stupid, okay? Covert operations means is we're just going to fucking do it anyway and then deny it. That's what they're saying. And it's like, you can go that route, sure. But then if they can prove it, like, I don't know, like capturing that pilot Powers with the U-2 spy plane thing, then you're fucked. But if you get a UN resolution charter to do it, then it's like, nope, we voted on this together. This is a collective front. Yes, we have escalated this, but we're playing right out of your playbook, Mr. Putin. De-escalation through escalation. Your move, Skeletor. And then wait to see what he would do.
The problem with that idea is, though?
The problem is everything Putin does, he's doing to see if he can get away with it. Like, we've all come to that conclusion.
The problem with trying to go to and use the UN. The UN is freaking useless. It's as useless as the League of Nations was before World War I.
Yes.
Yeah, they are pretty useless.
What he was trying to say is you can't get NATO to do it. You can't get the votes to get NATO to agree to this, which means it would have involved a single nation committing, and then if other ones wanted to jump in, they would just join the bandwagon. Whereas if he gets the UN to propose this, they only need 9 votes out of 15. and you can sort of lobby 9 votes amongst yourselves. It's just like how Congress works, right? It's easier to get 9 than it is to get NATO to agree. And he says this is a possible avenue.
Well,
Now,
here's
after
the
that
thing.
interview,
Who's on the Security Council?
I- regardless, the thing is at least it's going to get a conversation going. I'm stealing a G-Web's term here. It's going to start a conversation because right now, every day in situation rooms all over the world, they're sitting down going, all right, what are we going to do about this? And then there's short meetings because some countries are like, well, we can't do shit about it. And there's some that are much longer going, what about this? What about this? How about this? Well, if we do this, doesn't that make us this? And people are running out of ideas because we're 10 days into this now. So it's like, this
Okay,
was
I
a
got
fresh
another question
idea
for you.
from a guy who's pretty well respected. And it's like,
I got another
okay,
question
it's
for you
worth
then.
fielding the question.
Do you think President placeholder is actually going to do anything?
Biden?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's the point. You see, if he gets 9 votes in a UN UN resolution for a UN no-fly zone, right? Biden doesn't have to do anything. He could just say, "Well, yeah, I
No.
voted, but I
Would
won't be
he
able to
even
get
bring
planes
that
over there for a
to
month. You
the
guys are there
UN?
right now."
Would he even bring that to the UN, though?
He doesn't have to.
Is what I'm saying.
Any nation that heard that interview can propose it. Anybody in the
Good luck
UN
with
who
that.
heard that interview today, which I guarantee you, that was saved and linked so people can share it. Because I saw that at lunchtime, and I thought, I was eating, right? And I heard him say that. I heard him cite the actual, like, articles, and I thought, ooh, that's pretty clever. And I grabbed a pen and I wrote it down, and I was like, I gotta read up on this because I wanted to learn something today. I didn't say it was gonna be the be-all, end-all solution, but it was a very refreshing thing to hear. I was like, that's not bad. Let me look into that, right? And that's why I played it here, because I wanted to start a discussion on it. Yes, it's going to drag people in, another nation or in the United Nations, but it may come down to that. I mean, if it's something as simple as, hey, we're covering the skies, but we're still not committing troops on the ground, and we haven't fired a shot, we just kind of chase them off like we do at Alaska with when the Russians planes cross
Yeah,
over or whatever.
that'll work.
Hey, I'm just saying,
Uh,
I'm just saying
you are
harassment,
desperate.
right?
You are grasping at straws, man.
Well,
Here's the
you have
deal.
to
One.
think
All
like the
right,
UN, don't you?
if the UN gets some European nations to do this, and so let's say Germany, France,
England.
Great Britain, and Poland all say, "All right, we do this." Putin's going to go, "All right, war was just declared by Germany, France, Poland, and Great Britain, not the United Nations."
Okay. Okay.
Also, when you put the UN in charge. They make the rules of engagement. They coordinate this, coordinate that.
Sure.
The UN screws everything up. They
And
do.
then,
Well, because they do
and
everything
then the
by
other thing
committee.
is, which is slow to act.
Well, right, but the whole point is right now you've got a guy who escalate, or he gets us to stand down every time when he's the one making the threats. Our side never makes the threats back, so he
The other
continues to get braver and more belligerent and more
the other problem is,
emboldened. And
anytime
it's
the
like you're
UN
just helping
freaking
Gollum
wants to
get
do
bigger.
something, who do they look to?
Who?
They look to us,
Who?
the UN.
Not
Anytime
anymore.
they have a peacekeeping mission, oh yeah,
Not
we
anymore.
still
You see, the
contribute
thing is
the bulk
the last
of UN
president
forces.
kept trying to take the UN to task, saying, "Pay your share, contribute your share."
No, that
And
was NATO.
well, it's the same principle, though. He was like, "Look, we're not bleeding for all of you when you only send us 10 troops." Like he put them on point. So we weren't very popular with either one of them. We weren't popular with
No, Nikki Haley pissed off quite a few people at the UN.
Well, that's fine. Who's trying to stream a video?
It's not working.
Well, no, I mean, it says that you're trying it. We can watch
Oh.
it if I click it.
It's just a picture.
Do you... Are you trying to troll right now? I'll click it if it's relevant.
He's definitely trolling.
Okay.
trolling.
Come on, man. Oh, wait, I just used his thing. Oh, shit.
Anyway.
Well, you know, you know.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Anyway, enough.
Let's go, Brandon.
Oh God, no! You stop. I know what the thing. You know the thing. All right, all right. So, okay, I shared the video. I was trying to start, a dialogue about it, but at the end of the day, none of us are going to be the ones who are going to make it happen. I wanted to put it out there because I thought it was really clever. Whether it was positive or negative, your decision. But it was different. Like that, it's
Positive
not.
or what?
Huh?
You said whether it was positive or
not.
okay.
All right. I got, let's see, 3 more? Yeah, 3 more stories. 4, Jesus, maybe more than 3. Let's try to get through these quickly. It's been 3 hours and 20 minutes. God. All right. Let's see. Okay, so these all came after I got home. So this is 5:14 Central Time. This is now 2:13 in the morning Ukrainian time. And apparently this was dispatched out that the entire U.S. Senate has been invited, I guess through telepresence, to meet with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky on Saturday, on Zoom. The meeting comes as the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters its second week. Vladimir Putin approved a, quote, special military operation on February 24th, saying that our confrontation with these Ukrainian forces is inevitable. So, I suspect this is just going to be another hearts and minds type situation where Zelensky's going to face the Senate and he's going to be like, my troops are fighting street to street, man to man. We've been holding out or they came into the country with 3 days worth of rations. I've held them off for 10 days. How many more days do I need to hold this off before you give me anything I can use aside from thoughts and prayers? That's what he's going to say. Obviously, they're sending javelins and all other stuff. I get that. But he's asking for more. And he's going to keep pleading, and his ministers in parliament are going to keep pleading, and the people on the ground are going to keep pleading. And if it keeps going unanswered, then if they do get eradicated, then like I said, they'll probably just say, "Fuck it, we don't want to be a part of either one of you. We're just going to be this thorn in both of your sides and leave us the fuck up." They're going to be a porcupine in between Russia and Europe, which technically means Putin wins because he wants a buffer, and that would create a buffer that hates him, but it's a buffer regardless. We'll see. I mean, it's going to happen tomorrow, so I guess in tomorrow's episode, we'll cover that, and I promise it won't be 3 hours. God damn it, it won't be 3 hours. If it is, I'll cut it short. Anyway. All right, so anyway, an hour later, it's now 6:15. Yeah. And it's, 3:15 a.m. Ukrainian time. I got my time translation screwed up. Airbnb and Booking.com confirms that they have suspended all operations in Russia and Belarus. With each passing day, as the urgency of this devastating war in the Ukraine intensifies, so do the complexities of doing business in the region. If you are going to Belarus or Russia, and you're going to spend the weekend there with an Airbnb with your, I don't know, Belarusian hooker and sniffing rails of coke off her ass, you deserve to stay there. Maybe don't come back. Who the hell in their right mind is going on vacation in either one of those countries right now? Just a thought. 3 minutes later, it's 3:18 Moscow time. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed into law Friday legislation that would punish journalists with prison time for publishing news that contradicts official statements about Moscow's war in Ukraine. What does that sound like? You will post what we tell you. That's what that is.
It sounds like what the current administration is probably going to try to implement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of what Germany used. See, I'm trying desperately not to break Godwin's law, but you can't not draw the parallels, right? You couldn't do it in Soviet Russia in 1944. You couldn't do it in Nazi Germany in 1939. And you technically can't do it on Facebook for the last 4 years. Anyway. Let's see. Where did I leave off on that? Under the new law, reporters face up to 15 years in prison And if they report what authorities deems as false reports about the military, or sorry, if, okay, legislation was passed by both chambers of the Russian parliament. Tim Davie, the Director General for the BBC, said the law criminalizes independent journalism and said the media outlet has suspended the work of its journalists and staff in Russia. Our BBC News service in Russia will continue to operate from outside of Russia, he said Thursday. The safety of our staff is paramount, and we are not prepared to expose them to the risk of criminal prosecution simply for doing their jobs. Right. I would probably suspect that Al Jazeera closed their office in Moscow too. Just a hunch. Their main office is in Doha, which is I think in
What
the
was
UAE.
your first clue?
Just a clue. Just a hint. I don't know. I mean, I guess the big clue is you've never heard of a terrorist attack in Moscow, have you? Nobody in their right mind. Anyway, moving on. Now we're almost done. I promise. I got 2 stories left. I can see the bottom. 7:05 p.m. So this is just before we were getting ready to go on air, like an hour before. It is 3:05 a.m. Moscow time. So the news is coming out of Russia, or at least a few of the stories were. Staff of a Russian independent television station, TV Rain, ended their final broadcast by, well, basically mic dropping and walking off the set on live TV Thursday. According to the BBC, the news outlet had stopped broadcasting indefinitely. The Russian government's telecommunications regulator has accused the station of inciting extremism, abusing Russian citizens, causing mass disruption of public calm and safety, and encouraging protests. So the news was like, fuck it, we're out of here. The whole crew walked off on camera like, fuck this. How cool is that? Like, screw this. We out. All right. 15 minutes later, this was like post facto report, I guess. I really want to know what you think about this guy, Swib, because I have a very nasty opinion of him, but Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby, during an appearance Friday, was asked exactly what the U.S. mission in Ukraine and what success would look like in the official's eyes. This is his quote. I'll tell you very clearly what the Pentagon and the Department of Defense is focused on. And it's really 2 things. One is continuing to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself. And they are defending themselves. And as we talked about a few minutes ago, we're helping them do that. We're trying to do that as fast as possible. Number 2, making sure that NATO can defend itself. And that's why the president has ordered additional troops over to Europe. That's why we reposition troops inside Europe to elsewhere on NATO's eastern flank. We're making sure that we can make positive that we can defend NATO's territory. And we're making it clear to Mr. Putin and our allies how serious we take our Article 5 commitments under the NATO treaty. The most useless piece of shit in Washington. That's what I write about John Kirby. Every time he goes up and has a press conference, noise comes out of his face, and all I hear is wah 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 wah. Nothing useful ever comes out of that guy's mouth. Nothing. But what he did do is he's already sent what he wants to sacrifice in the name of being an ally. Right? We sent 7,000 troops, I think, out of your state, Mike. I think we sent them out of South Carolina or Georgia.
Really?
I think it was either your state or Georgia. 7,000 troops to backfill Germany. So Germany can send 20,000 troops to, like, Slovakia. So this whole we're not getting involved thing.
Shares a border with Ukraine.
Yes. So this whole we're not getting involved thing, there's some truth to it, but there's a lot of mistruth to it because we've already sent tons of infantry. They're just not where the Ukrainians want them to be, but they're there. Oh yes, they're there.
Until they step across the border, we're not involved.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Physically, you're right. We're not military involved.
So if the Russians start fighting the Ukrainians on like the border of a NATO country, and the Russians step over those borders, then other countries can get involved. Correct?
The thing I
Yeah,
don't
get
understand
Okay,
is,
Article
so
5.
yes, yeah, okay. If the Russians cross over into a NATO country,
yeah,
then yes. But here's the thing: you actually bring up an interesting strategy there, Night Strike. Try to lure the Russians to the Polish border, and then kind
Then
of
then you can invoke Article 5.
Remove the
actually,
border
taunt them.
location
you
sign.
don't even have to do that because I guess you weren't aware of this, but NATO passed a resolution. I don't know if it was recently, but they passed a resolution that basically said cyber warfare is equivalent to kinetic warfare.
Yeah, and
So if
Russia's doing that to us all the damn
so if
time.
Russia's doing cyber attacks, they've already
More,
violated
more
Article
difficult to
5
prove.
on multiple occasions. See,
More difficult to prove, though.
no, you just look at a Norse IP map and you can see where the attacks are coming from. They show you the IP addresses. You can't mask that. You see it coming right from certain cities going to certain cities. There's no confusing that. So it's like all you got to do is say, "Wait, they're doing a cyber attack right now. It could be on us, it could be on Poland, it could be on
How
any
do you know
NATO
it's not a
nation."
private individual? How do you know it's the government?
Okay, maybe that
With the
might be
scale of
that
it.
might take a little longer to trace down, but when the Russian government on state TV talks about inflicting massive cyber attacks, you could just simply just be naive and take them at their word. Yeah, they did it. They even said it on TV. Play it back. Exhibit A. Go ahead and judge that, Hague. You know, they're gonna be like, nah, fuck that. That's good enough for us, right? I mean,
Also, let's face it, the spy agencies know where all the cyber attacks come out of.
you can see them for
Normally.
yourself. Like, if you
No, I
want, I
mean, they
will.
know where the government
Well, I've been meaning to do this anyway. I'm
missiles
gonna
come out of.
edit the. If you guys are really curious and would like to see it, because it's kind of fascinating. It's even you can use it as a screensaver because it's so fucking active. I will post links to some of the best cyber attack tracking maps on the internet, and just click one, and just like I don't know, turn off all the lights in your room, set it up on your TV, lay in bed, and just watch it. It looks like you're watching Missile Command. It's insane. Like the number of attacks that come out of Russia to like most of Europe and the United States, it's Missile Command. The number of attacks that come out of China, that is insane. The number of attacks are represented by the thickness of the beam that comes from the origin heading towards the target, and when it hits the target, the effect of the attack is reflected in like kind of a ripple effect. Like if you drop a pebble in the water, it makes the rings. Well, when the beam hits the target, it makes the rings. And you can tell how bad it is by the color of the ring and the size of the ring. And I gotta tell you, man, like if you ever catch it on the news, like the world is on a DDoS attack, and you watch that, you're wondering how the internet even functions with how heavy the traffic is. It's insane. But anyway, listen, we've wasted, I'm not saying we wasted, we have spent 3.5 hours of your time. I finally got Squib into a chat so he can talk, so I'm glad to have you here, and you are more than welcome to be here anytime you want. Like, I'm doing this every day, so I need that for parody anyway. If you've got the time, you're welcome to spend it here. I'd love to have you here. But for now, I'm going to play this, which I should have played an hour and a half ago. I'm gonna brag that, yes, I got my anaconda today. And I'm gonna edit the video tonight before I go to bed so you folks can see it. But if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check out the other playlists too, and see if maybe my other interests might be of interest to you. I'm dead tired. You guys have been stellar for hanging out with us, or staying up as late as you have, especially you, Mike, and you, Scott. And actually, you too, Squib, because I mean, you're technically East Coast or Eastern Time. So that
Yeah, but
being
I'm
said,
stuck at shift.
well, that being said, we love having you here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. This was the War Room.